The towering snow-capped mountains stretched towards the heavens, cloaked in a pristine white blanket of frost. Winds howled, carrying blinding snow across the mountainside, obscuring everything in sight. At the foot of the mountain, hidden beneath a thick layer of snow and ice, lay a dark cave. From this bottomless black abyss echoed a roar. "Fool, you think you can escape our encirclement?" What followed was a scene of brutal interrogation. "Where is the ancient artifact hidden?" A man with a scraggly beard and disheveled hair sneered. He leaned against a thick slab of ice, his hands severed, his face scarred. The severed limbs dangled by his feet. His voice dripped with contempt. "Idiot, if you were me, would you talk?" Facing him were the two assailants who had maimed him. One, seemingly hot-headed, lunged forward. "Arrogant dog." The other calmly raised a hand to stop him. "Leave it, we need to contact the main squad first." The calmer one held a beautiful blue ice shard close to his lips, using it as a communication device. Northern Ghost apprehended. "Please confirm our coordinates." The device responded. "Coordinates confirmed. We will arrive shortly." The calm one turned to the maimed man. "You are truly stubborn. Unbelievable that you still cling to life even with your hands severed. But why is the Northern Ghost also after the artifact the Emperor seeks?" The hot-headed one scratched his head in annoyance. "What other reason could there be? He's just trying to cause trouble. We've put up with him for far too long. Let's have some fun before the main squad arrives to repay all the hardship we've endured." The man lowered his head, his eyes filled with a terrifying, bloodthirsty glint. He remained silent. Behind him was an endless abyss. Before him, the oppressive darkness of his would-be executioners. The calm one drew his sword threateningly. "Prepare yourself, Northern Ghost. We will not stop until you desperately beg for death." The hot-headed one added. "Let's decide who goes first." "There's no time," the calm one countered. Resigned, the hot-headed one said. "Fine, then." A gold coin was tossed into the air, spinning. "If it's heads, I go first." While the two were distracted, the man stealthily gnawed on a part of his severed hand, reattaching it to the stump. He bit down with such fury that flesh tore and blood spurted. A dark light flickered in his eyes. His mind screamed, "I will not end like this, helpless." He remembered who he truly was, the Draker clan's first failed awakener. "It's me, Zeke Draker." Magical energy flowed from his mouth into his arm, healing the wound completely. His hand was restored. He began to recall the past. "I was a failed awakening. Something that should be a given for a night. I was treated like trash and driven out of my family." A tremendous shockwave reverberated through the snowy mountainside, shattering the stillness. "So, I did whatever I could to become stronger, to survive." He brandished a sharp sword, ready to annihilate everything. Old memories flashed before his eyes. Someone had once said, "If you only chase power, you will end up with nothing." The fateful coin landed, hidden beneath a palm. The hand slowly opened. The dragon-engraved face of the gold coin was revealed. "But that's bullshit," he thought. "Yes, it's heads." The hot-headed one roared triumphantly. Swish! A decisive sword stroke severed the hothead's head. Blood sprayed everywhere. The calm one turned in horror. Zeke Draker's eyes were wide and cold, devoid of hesitation, as if he were simply stating a fact. Only the strong get to talk. He glanced behind him. The calm one gripped his sword defensively. Zeke Draker swiftly slashed at his carotid artery. The terrified man had no time to react. In his eyes, "I was weak. The weak will be crushed by the strong, and everything they have will be taken." Thud! The calm one collapsed, blood gushing from his neck. However cruel, this is the truth of this world. The battle wasn't over. His gaze shifted towards a darkened corner. Zeke Draker picked up the remaining severed hand and used his magic to reattach it. "TCH, I guess I can't escape this." He approached a group of cloaked figures, identical to the two he had just dispatched. A heavy magical force emanated from them. They murmured amongst themselves. "What? He reattached his hand? An anomaly, disgusting. Regardless, he'll probably die if we cut off his head." Zeke Draker decided to strike first. Instantly, the cloaked figures lunged at him, surrounding him on all sides. Their swords pointed menacingly. He fought like a man with nothing to lose, showcasing his honed battle instincts and experience. Much later, Zeke Draker collapsed to his knees, surrounded by corpses. Damn it! A metallic taste rose in his throat. He coughed up blood. He covered his mouth with his hand, but the crimson liquid seeped through his fingers. His vision blurred. He looked at his blood-soaked palm. "It seems I will die soon." He felt a numb acceptance. He searched his person. Even if I can't have my revenge, I was able to steal the artifact the Emperor was looking for. Maybe I achieved something after all. His trembling hand pulled out the artifact, a carving of a sleeping dragon. He finally closed his eyes, surrendering. I'm sorry, Alicia. Blood trickled down his forehead and nose. A drop of his blood landed on the artifact. It glowed. Delicate gold dust motes floated out, weaving together to form the spirit of a colossal dragon that positioned itself behind Zeke Draker. Beneath the dragon's feet appeared the translucent, slender figure of a woman. A majestic, mechanical voice boomed, "Your strong will has awakened an ancient power. The soul of an ancient dragon has been etched into the will of the persistent." The woman bowed her head, embracing him from behind. The strange voice continued, "Emergency measures have been activated. Zeke Draker, do you agree?" Zeke Draker was barely conscious. "Meaningless words, as I die." The voice repeated, "Do you agree?" Exhausted, Zeke snapped, "Shut up, do whatever you want." Golden light enveloped him. Zeke Draker's eyes fluttered open. Golden specks of light enveloped him, and Zeke Draker's gaze became unfocused. The sound signifying his acceptance of the pact began to read aloud. The Awakener's contract had been confirmed, and an irreversible power was being activated. The countdown had begun. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Zeke Draker examined his face in the mirror, a youthful, petite-looking teenager. He was astonished. After regaining his awareness, "So this is what I look like now?" He blankly touched the mirror's surface. "I've returned to the past." Zeke Draker seemed to see his own tattered body at the moment of his death, kneeling, resigned to fate despite the unwillingness and sorrow that still lingered. He shuddered. "It's hard to believe. I can still clearly feel the sensation of a sword piercing my stomach." He leaned back against the bed, gazing at the ceiling and the familiar room around him. "This place. I know it well. This is the cradle." Indeed, he was inside a massive fortress, suffocating like a prison, the Draker family's training academy. The cradle. Speaking of the Draker family, one must first mention their title, the Dragonslayer clan. Draker. The Draker family was one of the three great dominant families. Tarrakin Draker was the hero who saved the entire continent by slaying the ferocious dragon Bahamut in a war 1,000 years ago. As generations passed, the bloodline of dragon slayers was inherited, giving rise to many descendants. These descendants established the current Draker family, perhaps because they were the offspring of the dragon slayer Tarrakin Draker. Every member of the Draker bloodline was blessed with light aura. It was easy for them to awaken high-level light aura and become knights. Zeke Draker scoffed. "Except for me." Suddenly, a familiar mechanical voice rang out. "System rebooting." Zeke was startled. He jumped out of bed and scanned the room. "Did I hear that wrong?" Unfortunately, he had not. The voice continued its announcement. "Awakener's soul detected. Awakener's soul confirmed to be 100% compatible. The Awakener's soul has been selected and has received the will of the ancient dragon. Full integration confirmed." Zeke Draker's pupils dilated in sheer shock as a glowing screen materialized out of nowhere. The voice even greeted him. "You have gained access to a portion of the system. It is a pleasure to meet you." Zeke Draker. Activating status window mode. Zeke Draker pressed his fingers against the glowing screen. He was amazed. "This looks just like a magic video. Has an artifact been activated?" The glowing screen displayed a notification. Opening status window. A densely packed status window appeared. Low-level administrator status window. Name: Zeke Draker. Class: Rare Healing Sorcerer. Title: Blessed by the Ancient Dragon. Class skills: Healing System, Calm Mind. Vitality Restoration, Enhanced Senses. Skills: Precise Thrust, Rank E, Novice. Slash, Rank E, Novice. Critical Strike, Rank D, Novice. Dragon Techniques. Unavailable, 10 points required to unlock. Karmic Points, 0. Zeke Draker tried to pass his hand through the screen. He was fascinated. "I can pass through it. Just like a magic video." He also tested the touch interface and discovered he could navigate it similarly. Zeke Draker leaned closer to the window, rubbing his chin in thought. Besides, his gaze landed on the class skills section, and he was shocked. Class skills. Dragon language isn't used in the current era anymore. He recalled the mysterious mentor he once met. That mentor had said that ancient people categorized themselves into different classes based on their strengths. Each class trained in a specialized technique called a skill. Since his class was a healing sorcerer, he was able to use a skill called healing. Zeke Draker felt a tinge of fear. After awakening, she had trained me so rigorously that I nearly died. His mentor had even chuckled ominously, saying, "Healing, huh? You'll be able to survive a lot of things." Zeke Draker remained deep in thought for a long time. Either way, according to the status window, I am a healing sorcerer. He decided to test it. Is the status window correct? Zeke Draker opened his palm. A pure light radiated forth before his own stunned eyes. To think, I'm still so young right now. In his previous life, he had only become a healing sorcerer in his 20s, right after unlocking the Ether Hall. Which means, Zeke Draker closed his eyes. Feeling the powerful currents of energy coursing through his pulse, he remained in meditation, letting the sensation wash over him. Then, suddenly, he opened his eyes. The surging energy in his consciousness made him grin triumphantly. I knew it. My Ether Hall has already been unlocked. Zeke Draker analyzed his situation. At this rate, even though my trained body is gone, I have returned to the past with my skills and memories intact. This realization filled him with confidence. Compared to before my regression, I'm in a much more advantageous position now. Zeke Draker continued exploring the screen. And to fully take advantage of this, I need to figure out exactly what I have at my disposal. Unexpectedly, there was a knock at the door. A voice called from outside. "Young Master Zeke, may I come in?" Zeke jumped in surprise. A cold, indifferent voice warned, "Pretending you're not here is pointless." Zeke frantically searched for a way to hide the status window. "I haven't even read everything yet. How do I turn this off?" The door creaked open as the voice announced, "I'm coming in." Zeke Draker's face paled. Wait. A deep, aged voice resonated. "I can't believe you're still not ready." A towering old man with neatly combed white hair, dressed in an impeccable suit, stepped inside. This was none other than Zeke's personal servant, Decker. He reprimanded him sternly. "What exactly are you thinking, young master?" Zeke Draker's mind reeled. "Decker," he quickly blurted out. "Ready? Ready for what?" Internally, he sighed in relief. It seems like he didn't see the status window. Thank goodness. However, an ominous aura surrounded Decker, turning the atmosphere dark. His sharp, ice-cold gaze pierced Zeke as his voice grew steely. "Are you seriously asking me that, young Master Zeke?" Zeke shivered involuntarily. He lowered his head, feeling uneasy. Now that I think about it, I really was terrified of Decker as a child. Even though his mind belonged to a 32-year-old man, he couldn't forget the fear deeply imprinted in his body. At that moment, a system notification appeared, activating Calm Mind skill. The suffocating fear weighing down on him suddenly vanished like magic. Zeke Draker blinked in confusion. "What? My anxiety disappeared in an instant?" The system explained. "Calm Mind. The user's psychological state will not waver under any circumstances. They will be able to maintain composure." Another new discovery. Zeke Draker furrowed his brows in thought. So this is also a skill? How convenient, it activates automatically. Meanwhile, Decker continued his lecture. "I have repeated many times that this is an important event." Seeing Zeke dazed, he sighed. "Huh? Are you even listening, young Master Zeke?" Zeke snapped out of it and nodded. "Of course, Decker." Recalling the bloodshed of that battle, he asked, even though he had once suffered a humiliating defeat, "You're talking about the pancreation evaluation test, aren't you?" All members of the Draker family underwent a training system called the Cradle. Starting at the age of 7, for 5 years, they endured rigorous basic training. Instructors evaluated the new students annually through swordsmanship competitions and no-holds-barred pancreation matches. Opponents were chosen by the instructors, but sometimes students could choose their own adversaries, provided both agreed. Because there were no rules, some ended up injured, or even dead. But since this competition determined class placement within the academy, the children had no choice but to fight with everything they had. In a vast arena, a group of students stood in formation. The commander, arms clasped behind his back, addressed them in a loud voice. "As you all know, today is the pancreation tournament." He continued, "I trust you all understand that this is the final part of the evaluation. Correct?" "Yes, sir," the students responded in unison. The commander, also known as Chief Instructor Panmark, nodded. "Good. It seems everyone's spirits are high. Then let's begin immediately. Be prepared." "Yes, sir," the students replied again. Zeke Draker stood amidst the students, surrounded by whispers and taunts. "It's Zeke. He was humiliated last year. And he's still here? Man, if I were him, I'd have run away. How can he be of the direct bloodline? Pathetic. Zeke Draker, his face impassive, thought to himself, I hear you. Aaron, gotta step forward. The instructor called out. Yes, sir, came the replies. 2 students entered the arena. Assuming fighting stances, the instructor raised his hand. Prepare. As his hand swiped down. Begin. One student lunged at his opponent with lightning speed. A fist flying out, but the opponent reacted instantly, kicking him squarely in the chin. The attacker spat out blood, his eyes rolling back as he collapsed. Zeke Draker, watching from the sidelines, yawned lazily. That fight's over. That's what happens when you don't have a proper guard. The match is concluded. Result. Gata is unable to continue. Aaron wins. Zeke Draker, having witnessed the fight, propped his chin on his hand. Bored. I think I was scared to death back then, but these guys are nothing. He yawned again, unaware that from the distant stands, a pair of cruel eyes were watching him. Leon Conrad cracked his knuckles, a sinister smile spreading across his face as he stared at Zeke Draker. The next match was announced. Zeke Draker and Leon Conrad entered the arena. Zeke, Leon, are you ready? Pan Mark asked. Yes, sir, Zeke replied enthusiastically. Yes, Leon responded wearily. He rubbed his eyes sleepily. My opponent is Leon again. Leon Conrad sneered. Look at you. Back for more. Seems like last year's beating wasn't enough. Huh? Zeke Draker shrugged. Whatever. He remembered his humiliating defeat in his previous life. Beg for your life if you want to live. You parasite. I am sorry. Young Master Leon Conrad. Please spare me this time. Zeke Draker knew this was a prearranged scheme targeting him. Leon was always his opponent every year. He must have pulled some strings behind the scenes. His family will spout some nonsense about how overcoming dirty tricks like this is what makes a true dragon slayer. Looking at Leon Conrad's arrogant, hateful face, he felt only disgust. Why is trash like this my cousin? Whenever he thought about his family, Zeke Draker always remembered his 4 direct cousins. In his previous life, the 4 siblings of the direct bloodline never had the chance to meet. However, there were dozens of other cousins, always ready to bully him. I have to admit, Zeke Draker, Leon Conrad interrupted his thoughts, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You actually have the guts to come back here after getting trashed last time. He tapped Zeke's head condescendingly. Or maybe, mental tranquility skill activated, the system announced. Zeke Draker calmly sighed. It's been a while since I've heard his stupid insults. He looked up at Leon, his voice firm. Listen, I won't be so lenient if you call me that again. Leon Conrad, taking advantage of his height, ruffled Zeke's hair. And what are you going to do about it? You lowly dog? He taunted. Wham! Zeke Draker, standing firm, landed a powerful slap across Leon Conrad's face with a single hand. Caught off guard, Leon Conrad was sent sprawling. Critical hit skill activated. Skill. Critical hit, D. Inflicts critical damage on the enemy. May backfire if the attack fails. The system announced. Leon Conrad clutched his face in agony, screaming, Arg, my face, my face. Zeke Draker, feeling the surge of magical energy, stared at his own hand in surprise. I only meant to knock him unconscious, but my skill activated with a normal punch. I really can't control my abilities well. What are you doing, Zeke Draker? Instructor Panmark yelled. Zeke Draker crouched down, protectively shielding Leon Conrad while rebuking the instructor, who said, ready, set, go, on a battlefield? He smiled, a chillingly arrogant grin spreading across his face. The one who strikes first gains the advantage. Instructor Panmark's eyes widened in fear. Did I just sense bloodlust from him? I'm fine. Instructor. Leon Conrad stammered, struggling to his feet. Panmark looked at him anxiously. Leon Conrad slowly rose, blood trickling down his face. Please start the match. I will. He glared at Zeke Draker, his entire being consumed by rage. Finish. That lowly dog. Zeke Draker glanced at him dismissively. It seems you're the one who's too stupid to learn a lesson. Prepare, Panmark announced, his voice strained. Begin. Leon Conrad charged towards Zeke. His eyes burned with resentment. What the? Frantic thoughts raced through his mind. I was scared by that punch. A realization struck him. If I had been on guard, he would have been nothing. What I need to watch out for is... His gaze focused on Zeke Draker's clenched left hand. His left-handed counterattack. As Leon Conrad anticipated, Zeke Draker swung his left hand. Leon Conrad swiftly ducked low, grabbing Zeke's leg and attempting a takedown. "Down you go, you lowly dog," he roared triumphantly. Suddenly, Leon Conrad's face contorted in pain. His senses reeled. He stumbled back, disbelief etched on his face. What just happened?" Instructor Panmark stared at Zeke Draker in horror. Zeke, oblivious, clicked his tongue in disappointment. "TCH, seems like that wasn't enough." Panmark's face paled as he replayed the scene in his mind. "Are you kidding me? This is the battle sense of a 12-year-old?" He continued to analyze. The moment Leon dodged Zeke's counter and went for the takedown, I thought Leon would win. However, Zeke punched Leon in the chin and escaped his grasp. It was Leon's mistake to let his guard down, thinking he had Zeke captured. But Zeke was too calm. Despite his failed counterattack, the focus and precision required to deliver such an effective and accurate blow. Panmark was forced to look at Zeke Draker with completely new eyes. Is this really the Zeke Draker I know? Leon Conrad, now aware of his bruised and battered face, felt his head spin. Damn it, I can't do anything like this, he thought. First, I need to create some distance. In the next instant, Zeke Draker accurately kicked him in the weak spot on his leg. The force was so great that Leon Conrad nearly lost his balance. He panicked. Damn it, he's so small, but how is he so strong? He struggled to steady his trembling leg. "You, lowly," he muttered. "How dare you?" he roared, throwing a punch. But Zeke Draker's eyes glowed purple. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. "Alright, this time I can control my power." Enhanced Senses skill activated. Skill. Enhanced Senses. Temporarily increases all senses. The system announced. Zeke Draker effortlessly dodged Leon Conrad's attack. Ah, this feeling is so familiar. He focused his power in his arm, a smirk playing on his lips. Now I'm used to controlling ether. He easily slammed Leon Conrad to the ground with a few swift movements. I'll end this match now. Crash. Zeke Draker delivered a final blow. The force so tremendous that the ground cracked. Dust and debris flew everywhere. Instructor Panmark trembled. What? Zeke Draker pinned Leon Conrad down. Precise Strike skill activated. Skill. Precise Strike. Strikes the enemy's weak point to inflict critical damage. The system announced. As the skill activated, Leon Conrad's internal organs and spine shattered. Zeke Draker continued to raise his fist, showing no sign of relenting. Even an idiot like you, he said with relish, can learn a lesson from this, right? He stood up from Leon Conrad's broken and motionless body, an aura of bloodlust swirling around him. Just try it and see. He wiped his sweat-drenched brow, his voice filled with satisfaction. Sweating a little clears the mind. He addressed the remaining apprehensive students. Now I can recognize the people here. Stop lurking. Zeke Draker waved his hand in a challenging gesture. If you have something to say, come down here. From the stunned crowd, a boy with auburn hair burst out laughing. Zeke Draker, I choose you as my pancration opponent. Like you said, I have something to say. He looked up, and Zeke recognized him as another cousin. Jackin Vardek. Sure, Zeke agreed readily, not forgetting to provoke him. With a mocking smirk, he added, but just you is boring. Liam Stone, why don't you join in too? I think that would make the match more balanced. Jackin fumed, his teeth grinding together. Did you just mock me? He asked. His eyes narrowed. Zeke feigned innocence, replying with a nonchalant, yep, dummy. Jackin's face twitched, veins bulging. Zeke Draker, I will kill you. The two sides entered the arena. Chief Instructor Mark warned Zeke sternly. Don't do anything before I give the signal. Zeke, however, was excited to see Liam here, the one known as the Mercenary King. Even in his past life, as Jackin's attendant, Liam had participated in the cradle and the academy. But as a distant relative, he had been neglected in his education. He had pleaded to participate in advanced studies at Valhalla Academy, but ultimately joined a knightly order of a small nation called Baranon. When Baranon fell, he became a mercenary. But in times of chaos, people flocked to the strong. And after a long period as a mercenary, he became a Crimson Knight and established his own mercenary group, the Stone Mercenaries. He unified the three largest mercenary guilds and quickly became known as the Mercenary King. With the rise of the Stone Mercenaries, Liam participated in the Continental War, and Zeke, along with the Northerners, had faced Liam as enemies. Begin, the call rang out. Quick as a flash, Zeke closed the distance with his opponent. Jackin, however, remained rooted to the spot. I told you to come at me together, Zeke said slowly. Jackin shoved Zeke away. You think I'd fall for your cheap tricks? He snarled, launching a swift kick. He was sure it would land. But Zeke anticipated the move, raising his elbow to block. Pain shot through Jackin's leg. He looked down at it. As he looked up, Zeke had already raised his fist, ready to strike. Reflexively, Jackin raised his hands to shield his face. You seem a bit too scared, Zeke commented. You can't even tell a feint anymore. That's why I said to come at me together. He punched Jackin hard in the left side, sending him sprawling and coughing up blood. Jackin, down on one knee, roared, Liam, kill this bastard. Liam said nothing, silently removing his armbands. Despite his mental preparation, Zeke felt a twinge of apprehension facing such a strong opponent. He's 12 years old like us, right? The most troublesome thing about fighting him is his overwhelming reach. If he gets the first move, I won't be able to do anything. He had to seize the initiative. Activating his E-rank /skill, Zeke launched a barrage of attacks, aiming to disrupt his opponent's vision. The spectators gasped. They had never seen anything like it. This was a northern fighting technique from the Midlands, where swords reigned supreme. I was born in a place with favorable conditions. But my body is weak. This much is already making me ache. Faced with Zeke's relentless assault, the mercenary king simply stood his ground, blocking each blow without attempting to counter or evade. That physique is the real problem. Zeke's continuous attacks were rapidly draining his stamina. He was nearing his limit. He poured all his remaining strength into a single punch, aiming for a decisive blow. But Liam effortlessly tilted his head, avoiding it. Zeke gritted his teeth. He can't even see ether with his eyes. Everyone here possesses incredible senses. Jackin, seeing an opening, grabbed Zeke's wrist, attempting a takedown, but Zeke escaped with a knee to Jackin's face. Mental tranquility skill activated, the system announced. Zeke spun around, using his leg to choke Liam and locking his arm. No matter how strong your body is, if your brain doesn't get enough oxygen, you can't do anything. Liam's next action made Zeke exclaim, "This crazy bastard." Everyone held their breath, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. Jackin, on the sidelines, smirked. Good, I expected at least this much from you. This is what you deserve for looking down on me. Zeke Draker. In Zeke's private room, Decker's worried voice echoed. I heard you were severely injured during the pancration tournament. Are you alright, young master? If it wouldn't be presumptuous, may I check your pulse? In reality, he wanted to ascertain if Zeke had awakened his aura. Zeke extended his hand. The moment Decker touched it, a blue light coursed through his body. He's a blue knight? When checking if someone has awakened, they usually just examine the Dantian. But he's actually being very thorough. Just channeling aura into someone else's body is already difficult enough, let alone controlling it with such precision. He must be a blue knight. Not all knights are the same. They are categorized based on their martial prowess and proficiency in manipulating aura. White knights are the basic level. Most children before their blessing are white knights. Yellow knights are the level attained when you awaken your aura and open your Dantian. All students in the cradle become yellow knights after the blessing. Once you learn to freely control your aura, you receive the title of knight. Four-colored knights are those who can enhance their swords with aura. Blue knights are capable of manifesting a blade of aura. And the realm of those who transcend limits, the realm of the mercenary King Liam, which Zeke had achieved before his rebirth, is the Red Knight. There are also Black Knights, but there are only a few monsters like that on the entire continent. Zeke kept wondering, how did someone strong enough to be a commander end up being my caretaker? But it didn't matter. Decker couldn't possibly detect his ether. Only 2 people in the world could use it. Decker released Zeke's hand and asked, Young master, could it be? Is there anything I can assist you with? Zeke stared into his eyes. Why, are you hiding something from me? The atmosphere immediately tensed. Zeke waved his hand dismissively. Just kidding, he said, turning to leave. A question stopped him in his tracks. Why have you changed so suddenly? Young master? Zeke turned back, his gaze sharp. That's the wrong question. You should be asking why I'm only changing now. I've changed a lot of things since then. Everything will fall into place. So, all you need to do is follow me. The butler bowed his head. Understood, young master. I understand now. I've prepared the training room as you requested. You can rest. Zeke dismissed him. Despite his nonchalant exterior, Zeke was deep in thought. If he's been ordered to monitor me, Then I need to keep him close to extract information instead. The question is, who ordered him to monitor me? I don't think it was someone from my mother's side. It's definitely one of my siblings. He paused before a room, looking around. Inside, the training equipment was complete and well maintained. A personal training room? This family certainly lives up to its reputation. He sat on the floor, opening the system. Low-level administrator status window. Job: Rare. Healing Mage. Title: Ancient Dragons Chosen. Skills: Healing School, Mental Tranquility, Vigor Recovery, Enhanced Senses. Current Karma Points: 0. His slash skill had reached proficiency. Skills were naturally activated based on his actions. Zeke pondered. So, I had it all along? If I learn something new, will it be added here as a skill? What's the difference between skills and healing school skills? They're activated similarly, and the unviewable Dragon Knight skill required 10 points to unlock it. The system provided a hint. Karma points. You can earn karma points by killing monsters. Monsters, in the dungeons. There are tons of them, but I need to at least become a 4-colored knight to enter. Furthermore, I'm more curious as to why I was reborn into the past and what this system is. This skill and job thing tells me it's definitely related to that ancient artifact. But I have too little information. He picked up his sword. Whatever, as long as it helps me become stronger, I'll use it, whether it's the system I'm using or a member of the Zeke family. There were 2 known powers in the world: Knight's aura and Mage's mana. Knights amplified aura in their Dantian. Mages manipulated mana with a magic circle. These 2 powers were at opposite ends of the spectrum, so once you awakened one, you couldn't awaken the other. However, Zeke was unfortunate enough to not awaken either his Dantian or magic circle. He was rejected by the family and met his master during his wandering days. His master taught him many things, but the most useful things were healing and the ether sphere. Through it, Zeke was able to use the energy of nature, ether. His master and he were the only ether users in the world. After only 2 hours of training, he felt like he was about to faint. He couldn't stand and had to lean on his sword to avoid falling. The system activated 2 healing school skills in succession: healing and vigor recovery. Healing was a very rare skill. If he used it in front of people, they would think he was a freak. That's why Zeke couldn't use it during the match with Liam. Despite being severely injured, in a short time, his body fully recovered and was full of vigor. He continued to practice swordsmanship until dinner. The well-maintained room was now filled with sword marks, looking very desolate. A week later, at the Cradle's dining hall, the knights whispered, "Have you heard about Zeke? He's completely different now. That failure? Could he have dabbled in black magic? Nonsense. Hopefully, he'll straighten out some of the stronger ones." That's right. In the hall, a table of 4 young masters sat apart from everyone else. Jaqen Vardek and his friends, each with their own personal attendant. Raina Tarun ate with a disgusted look on her face. Owen Zimmons cut his steak and said, "You need energy for the swordsmanship sparring." Raina glared at him. "Are you trying to provoke me?" Owen replied, "I'm just being friendly. But it seems your inferiority complex is pretty bad." Raina abruptly stood up, slamming her hand on the table. "What did you say?" The force caused the steak Owen was cutting to fall, turning his expression to purple-faced anger. Jaqen spoke to defuse the situation. "So, what do you all think?" Zeke Draker, his pancration match was brutal, but also impressive. However, he'll be pathetic when it comes to swordsmanship. What can he do when he can't even hold a sword? That's right, he's so weak that he has to order custom swords because regular swords are too heavy for him. That's right, there's no way I could lose to that lowly piece of garbage again. I believe everyone who watched knows that. He only won that match due to luck. Raina left the table. If you truly believe that, then you don't deserve to become knights of the Draker family. A swordsmanship sparring match, unlike pancration. Real swords were used, and it was the cause of most accidents in the cradle. It was also where the skill gap between students was most apparent. And a month after the current exams, the blessing ceremony would be held, the event where the Draker family members awakened their aura. "Zeke, step forward," the chief instructor instructed. Zeke entered the arena with a long sword over his shoulder. The onlookers gasped and whispered, "What's with that ridiculously long sword? Does he think using a big sword will make him stronger?" Facing him was Raina Tarun, brimming with energy as if she wanted to devour him whole. "I choose you as my opponent," she said directly. Zeke lowered his sword. "Sounds good. I accept your challenge." Raina drew her sword. He's holding the sword two-handed so easily. Now that I'm facing him, I can tell that this is no longer the Zeke I knew, the one who could barely hold a sword. Could it be that he's grown? Or is it his aura? What am I saying? I can't let myself be intimidated before the match even starts. I confidently accepted, like I always do. But fighting the Lightning Knight is quite stressful. Raina Tarun, also known as the Lightning Knight, was one of the knights who made a name for herself during the Continental War. She was also recognized as one of the strongest in the next generation of the Draker family because she had awakened her aura before entering the blessing ceremony. She must have awakened her aura a few years ago at this time. But she hasn't used it in the cradle, saying she wants to improve her fundamentals. The signal to begin the match rang out. Raina quickly closed in on Zeke, each sword strike skillful and decisive, forcing him to retreat temporarily. She's better than expected. Don't play with him, kill him with one blow. Raina, someone yelled. In the stands, Jackin was also watching. How stupid. Does it look like Raina's playing with him? The match on the ground was extremely intense. Both sides remained evenly matched without any progress. The space now seemed to consist only of Zeke Draker and Raina. Although narrow, Zeke could still sense openings. However, no matter how quickly he tried to capitalize on them, her sword met his, as if commending his effort. And soon after, another opening would appear. That's right, this is like a training match, used to teach Zeke. After the direct clash, both had learned a lot about their opponent. So, this is how the Lightning Knight fights when in the cradle. Her swordsmanship is so straightforward. What's to be expected from someone obsessed with their fundamentals? But that's what's holding her back. Let's see. Why don't I try to help her break out of her shell? With that thought, Zeke lowered himself into an extremely low stance, planning to close the distance in one strike. Raina was mentally prepared. Her speed was also not ordinary. Even though she was prepared, she didn't think he'd be so fast. He was faster than a leopard. Raina narrowed her eyes, concentrating as much as possible. As long as there's distance between us, reacting to his actions is impossible. He slashed at the ground. The arena floor cracked as two rocks struck Raina in the face. She instinctively covered her face. By the time she removed her hands, the blade was already before her. It seemed as if victory belonged to Zeke. But no, Raina knocked Zeke's sword into the air. The students gasped. Zeke lost. As expected of Raina, she didn't even use her aura like always. Only Panmark truly understood. His face paled. No, the students didn't realize. But when Zeke's attack approached Raina, she used the smallest amount of aura possible. It was such a small amount that it was almost undetectable. Raina, the one who promised to never use aura until she officially entered the academy, he forced her to do it. While Raina was off guard, Zeke rushed in with a punch. What is he doing? It's not over yet. The punch was aimed directly at Raina's throat. She didn't have time to dodge and took the blow head on. She coughed up a large mouthful of blood. The spectators were outraged. They pointed and scorned. This is a swordsmanship sparring match. We won't tolerate such a base attack. That's right, a knight abandoning their sword. This is Raina's victory. He has no qualities to become a knight. How shameful. Zeke didn't care about those judgments. Do you want to continue? He asked his opponent. Raina clutched her throat. I haven't lost yet. He only managed to hit me because I was careless. If he wasn't using his bare hands but had a dagger, I might have, Raina said. I lost. The audience stared in disbelief at that statement. Zeke Draker, who just days ago was called the trash of humanity, had achieved victory over one of the most talented children from a prestigious family. The opening scene was a desolate landscape, a burnt-out castle. Blood-soaked roads, injured soldiers lying everywhere, some covered in cloths, corpses piled at the foot of the mountain. A black-haired knight with glasses asked worriedly, Abel, you're drinking tea in this situation? Zeke, they said that bastard defeated Raina. Abel put down his teacup calmly. William, you're always so serious. How long until the blessing ceremony? We have time until the next full moon. It seems now is a good time to visit the main house. Abel said as he walked towards the door. William panicked. What, you're going there in person? Abel replied. He's piqued my curiosity. I'm interested to know what kind of awakening my youngest brother has undergone. Although Zeke's victory shocked the entirety of the cradle, he simply returned to the training grounds and continued his training. A month later, on the day of the blessing ceremony, Zeke was training so hard that he was drenched in sweat. He took a towel and wiped his face. I really don't understand how I became a red knight with this body in my past life. He opened the status window. System opened. Precise strike, E, proficient. /E, Novice. Critical hit, D. Seasoned. Agile footwork, D. Seasoned. As expected, one of his skill proficiencies had surpassed the proficient level. His skill leveled up and the proficiency was reset. Zeke had even leveled up the proficiency of agile footwork, a skill obtained during sparring. There was a knock on the door. "Decker, what do you want?" he asked. "We'll be departing in 2 hours," came the reply from outside. "Okay, I'll be there soon. Please prepare everything." They traveled through the forest in carriages. Sitting inside, Zeke pondered. "It's been a long time since I've been to the main mansion." It belonged to the Draker family and was located in the Duchy of Troy. Although the main family seat was located at the Four Seasons Fortress in the Midlands. The blessing ceremony had to be performed at the main mansion, the origin of the Dragonslayer legend. Arriving before the mansion, Zeke stepped out of the carriage. The Draker family's main mansion, the Dragon's Lair. The other young masters had already arrived. After gathering in the hall, they lined up and stood at attention on command. Zeke turned his head and looked around. "I never realized this before, but all of the guests are prominent figures whose names can only be heard in the continental newspapers. I'm sure the family has also sent people to gather news and monitor me. Whatever their intentions, once they see that I failed to awaken, I'm sure they'll ignore me." His eyes fell on someone. His entire body heated up with anger. "Why is that bastard here?" On the podium, 2 men were shaking hands. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" "Indeed. So what brings you to this blessing ceremony? Is there someone in this class that has caught your eye?" So, the mysterious person was Abel. He smirked. "No, I have another reason. It just so happens that my adorable youngest brother is also here," he said as he looked down. Abel Draker was the second son of the Draker family, the Sword Lion. Abel's eyes met Zeke's. "Ah, there he is." Just one glance was enough to unsettle Zeke's mind. "The Sword Lion? No, the Butcher Knight Abel." He reassured himself. "Calm down. I can't do anything right now. In my past life, Abel would never have come to see me at the blessing ceremony. Have my actions changed the future? If so, this could be an opportunity for me." The ceremony began. The host called out names one by one. First was Aaron. He stepped forward, rolled up his sleeves, and put his hand in the basin of water. A sharp object pierced his palm, causing blood to flow continuously. Through the blessing ceremony, all members of the Draker bloodline awakened the aura that had been sealed away when they graduated from the cradle at the age of 12. One by one, others' names were called, compared to regular knights, who awakened after the age of 20. It was surprisingly fast. Among them, there were a few rare cases where, along with aura, they would also awaken a characteristic of the Dragonslayer, the suppression of mana. When it was Raina's turn, the aura lamp suddenly malfunctioned. Emitting a red light, they would at least reach the level of a yellow knight, and a few would even rival red and black knights. Then they underwent a true blood awakening. Looking at Raina, Panmark ordered, "Bring me the gauntlets." Because of the suppression of mana, all such individuals would be required to wear special gauntlets made by their family. Otherwise they wouldn't be able to live a normal life. When someone proved themselves to be a descendant of true blood, they would be granted the Draker surname, along with unimaginable support from the family and countless rights. When it was Zeke's turn, the guests in the audience began to become interested. "Oh, finally, it seems the main course has arrived. I wonder what kind of awakening he'll undergo." A true blood awakening, of course. He defeated Raina. After all, Zeke approached the water basin confidently. "I never thought I'd be standing before this damned statue again. Last time was terrible. Although the blessing ceremony was the only thing that motivated me to get through the cradle, I received a shameful title. However, this time everything is different. I can not only heal, but I can also use ether. Most of all, I didn't give up and surrender. I stood up with my own will. So, please help me, you damned status statue." As the sword was about to plunge down as usual, it suddenly stopped. Everyone in the room was stunned. This had never happened before. Abel, standing above, also wore an indifferent expression. Zeke pulled his hand back. "Yeah, I shouldn't have expected things to change. Thanks to that bastard, I became too confident." They began to murmur. "What? He failed to awaken? Is that possible? But why? It seems the head family's blood is not enough to suppress the cursed blood." "Shush, be quiet." "So, how did he defeat Raina? He must have used some tricks. What a disgrace to the family." He glared at the noisy crowd with disgust. "These guys never change. Hey, it doesn't matter. There are many ways to become strong besides going through the awakening." Suddenly, The system appeared. I am sorry, Zeke Draker. Due to an error in the processing, a message was delayed. Required information was discovered to be missing from the identification device during job identification. Job information was entered using the system's administrative privileges. Necessary information was discovered to be missing. The job information input is complete. The device has identified the user's talent as Healing Mage, confirming that your job has unlocked. The received job has been identified as a rare job. A red light surrounded the statue. Once again, the room buzzed with excitement. It's red, a true blood awakening. He's starting with red. The system window continued to appear. The device has created a connection. The ancient dragon's blessing sealed within the user's soul has been activated. The fighter bloodline talent has been awakened. Your awakened talents have combined. With the combination of these rare talents, a new job has been created. Unique job, Undying. The entire room erupted in uproar. Golden light? What is this? Is this a true blood awakening? There's some red light as well. So it must be, right? Zeke listened silently. Of course, they're suspicious. But if I speak up here, it will harm me. The guests continued to whisper. But the aura lamp didn't do anything. So, is the statue malfunctioning? There's no suppression of mana. So it can't be a true blood awakening. Abel clapped twice to attract attention. He smiled gently. Why is everyone so serious? We have 2 true blood awakenings in 1 generation. Isn't this something to celebrate? The crowd awkwardly agreed. That's right, 2 true blood awakenings. What a blessing. What are you doing? Bring the gauntlets for the newest member. Zeke put on the gauntlets. They were a bit heavy for him. He glanced at Abel. His intentions are too obvious. But accepting help from Abel feels like chewing on a sticky lump of gold. After all the young masters finished their checks, the chief instructor announced, "This concludes the blessing ceremony. We will soon have a celebratory feast. It's for everyone, so please enjoy." Leaving behind the cheering crowd, Zeke headed straight for the door. A silly feast. There must be a training room somewhere here. Suddenly, someone called his name. It was Abel. The feast just started. Where are you wandering off to? Abel asked. Zeke rolled his eyes. He's approaching me so quickly. Abel smiled, but his eyes were not friendly. He extended his hand. Congratulations on awakening your true blood. Shake his hand? If I refuse, I'll reveal my hostility towards him. I'll play along for now. He reluctantly extended his hand, but remembering what happened in his past life, he unconsciously pulled back his hand. Abel Draker chuckled. Well, this is awkward. Zeke looked at him with resentment. Even to save face, he couldn't bring himself to shake hands with this scum. Abel waved his hand. Oh well, I'll have to be satisfied with just seeing your face. Bravo, Zeke, see you later. Hearing that, Zeke's face twitched. During the feast, they were still talking. 2 new true bloods? That's right. Zeke's golden light was quite unexpected. Is this the first time that's happened? I initially thought he failed to awaken. Where is he? Zeke Draker had already returned to his room. He relievedly took off the outfit and gauntlets. Sighing, I thought I was going to suffocate in those things. Putting that aside, how am I unscathed? All true blood awakenings came with mana suppression. It was an ability to prove that you were the enemy of dragons. The source of mana, however, since most machines used mana as fuel, the true bloods were required to use the family's gauntlets. He pondered, if I truly am a true blood, then there should have been a problem as soon as I took off the gauntlets. Zeke summoned the system window. It had been updated with some new things. Job, unique undying. Skills. Combo / D, novice. Critical hit, D, seasoned. Agile footwork, D, seasoned. Mana reversal, A, novice. Overall buff, A, novice. Current karma points, 100. After reading, he contemplated, this is different from before. Not mana suppression, but mana reversal? I need to read carefully. Mana reversal. Creates a distortion field to nullify mana nearby. So, mana reversal was classified as a skill. The aura lamp hadn't reacted because it wasn't a passive skill. Before the ceremony, Zeke was a rare healing mage. But now he was a unique undying. Zeke Draker seemed to remember something. He started piecing things together. Wait a minute, all graduating students had a normal awakening with blue aura. Only Raina had a red true blood awakening. Mine was initially red too, but it changed to golden. The system said, the identification device was missing essential information. The identification device? Does it mean that bronze statue? As soon as the system entered information, the statue that had stopped reacted with a red light. Zeke frantically scratched his head. He had realized how the statue assessed. That bronze statue doesn't determine whether or not you awaken. It determines the user's characteristic and their job. Red was for rare jobs, and golden was for unique jobs. That bronze statue is an ancient artifact used before the time of Terrakin, the founder of the Draker family. In that era, the concept of a job didn't exist, so it was only used to determine if a person awakened or not. Perhaps they mistakenly established that red light, the indicator of a rare job, was the sign of identifying a true blood awakening. And no family head has discovered this. He used 10 points to view dragon skills. Dragon skills level 1, dragon eyes, dragon way, might, presence, and devour. Of those, devour allowed the user to eat and digest a lot. It needed 50 points to unlock. Too risky. He used 20 points to unlock dragon eyes and 30 points to unlock dragon way, might, presence. After activating them, he felt disappointed because nothing happened. He had expected more since it said, detailed information. But really nothing had changed. But Zeke suddenly remembered. Wait a minute. He opened the door and looked out. A look of enjoyment gradually spread across his face. The statue in the middle of the garden seemed to be right in front of his eyes. The system displayed, "Would you like to receive detailed information of the detected object?" He pressed yes. A series of information appeared. Decorative candlesticks from Mycenae. Table made from olive wood and chairs made in the Luverne dynasty. Dresser made in the Merc Empire. Draker family formal wear. Carpets made in the Roman Empire. The information would pop up like that whenever his eyes caught sight of an object. Suddenly, his body began to tremble uncontrollably and he began to collapse. He sat down on a chair. His whole body felt as though his life force was drained. If all the dragon skills are like this, then I can't use them much. The healing school skills auto heal and vigor recovery activated. Zeke was surprised. What? I didn't intend to use healing. He read in the system. Wait a minute. All healing school skills have turned into passive abilities, and their levels have increased by 1. Healing was considered too strong, but it wasn't something you could continuously cast, and its healing effect was limited. However, auto heal was infinite. I need to test it out. Thinking that, Zeke grabbed a fruit carving knife from the table and slashed his hand. Fresh red blood flowed out. As expected, the auto heal skill automatically activated, and the wound healed instantly. It takes 5 years to graduate from the academy. Right? 5 years? He smiled smugly. I'll only need 2 years. Chap 8. The Draker Academy. The greatest knight academy on the continent, where those with knightly ambitions were willing to pay a high price to enroll. The Duchy of Troy, where the academy was located, was full of life every new semester in the spring. Zeke walked among the knights, their eyes looking at him with some envy and jealousy. The upperclassmen were no different from adults. They were trained to perfection. However, compared to those from the cradle, they were still children of great families. It seems they've marked their territory. This family is rotten to the core. Among the countless branch families supporting the superfamily Draker, the 3 most influential families were known as the 3 Great Families, including Turun of Strength, Zemans of Wisdom, Vardek of Wealth. Even the children of those 3 families were in this state. He left the crowd. Oh well, it doesn't concern me. At the luxury dormitory, the Platinum Tower, a dormitory with a training hall, library, and all kinds of facilities. It was only for upperclassmen, and even those from the cradle couldn't easily enter. However, for the true blood awakened, they were gifted with the privilege of owning an entire floor, called the Platinum Floor. Zeke entered the tower hall. A servant bowed. Welcome, Zeke Draker. We have been waiting for your arrival. We will escort you to your assigned floor. On the corridor of the floor, dozens of servants lined up on both sides. They said in unison, "Welcome, young master." He felt a little awkward. Isn't this a little too much? Even if I am a true blood? An elderly servant spoke up. Mr. Decker is waiting for you in the room. Zeke entered and asked, "What's going on, Decker?" He had already placed the box on the table. "I have something to deliver to you." Seeing the item, he was delighted. He smiled. "It's on a different level than the temporary gauntlets. I'm glad you like it." Zeke suggested, "I received new gauntlets, so I want to get a new sword along with it. What do you think, Decker?" He agreed. "An excellent choice, young master." Zeke looked into the distance. Because the Duchy of Troy is close to the colossal mountains, it has a lot of high-quality iron and outstanding blacksmiths. So much so that many have to say that a student's first weapon after graduation is scrap. Hearing that, Decker quickly said, "Then I will find a skilled blacksmith." Zeke picked up his sword and said, "No, that won't be necessary. I've already chosen someone." He gave Decker a piece of paper and smiled brightly. "I will personally go, so please arrange an appointment." Decker opened the paper. Galleon Halbert? I've never heard of this name. I'll contact them right away. In addition, classes will start tomorrow, so please look over the relevant materials beforehand. Zeke Draker was alone in the room, sitting in a chair reading the documents. With the platinum floor being completely isolated, I'll be freer to develop dragon skills. Someone knocked on the door. "Enter," Zeke said. The maid who greeted him at the door entered. "Excuse me, master. Floor master Raina has sent an invitation for dinner." Hearing her name, he accepted without thinking. Entering Raina's place, he quipped, "Interesting. It looks like a southern gang." Raina was already waiting. "Welcome, Zeke Draker. My family is a bit peculiar." "Apologies." She invited him to dinner in a courtyard. The surrounding air was very open. As he sat down, he said, "Thank you for your concern." Her bodyguards left. She ordered food from the chef. He was surprised. The lightning knight? A blue light emanated from around her. She's optimizing her dantian to control aura. And she also has her eye on becoming a four-colored knight. Then why is her swordsmanship stagnant? He sighed. What a waste of potential. After the meal, he was surprised by how much the girl ate, probably 3 times the amount Zeke ate. He thought to himself, I already eat a lot, but this is beyond my expectations. Raina slowly wiped her mouth. We're done eating, so I'll get down to business. Please accept the support of the Tarun family. Zeke Draker, he replied, it seems that you've forgotten. But we're both true blood awakenings. Raina explained to him, it seems that you've misunderstood true blood awakenings. It's true that we receive many privileges, just this platinum floor alone is enough to be proof, but we don't receive any benefits when it comes to development. Centuries of academic and practical knowledge accumulated in the academy. A personal instructor to improve your skills effectively. Without these things, no matter how wealthy you are, you'll fall behind. That's why support from the family is necessary. Even Abel Draker, a true blood like us, the youngest to ever achieve the title of White Knight and the current Black Knight, also receives support from his mother's side. The Zimmons family, although the head of the Tarun family didn't tell me the reason. He told me that you can't receive help from your mother's side. I will say it again, please accept the support of the Tarun family. Zeke Draker, her eyes were even more earnest than before, while Zeke wore an oblivious, provocative expression and waved his hand dismissively. Raina was stunned. She didn't expect to be rejected after a series of benefits. Why? Receiving support from the Tarun family isn't disadvantageous for you? She asked. Zeke smirked, stood up, and turned to leave. It's not that. I don't need anything more than what I received as a true blood awakening. It's not much, but to repay you for the meal, I'll give you a piece of advice right now. Your sword has too much strength behind it. I guess you're too mindful of those guys. Zeke touched a tree, causing its leaves to fall, creating a dreamlike scene. Listen closely. Raina, your greatest strength is your flexibility from having an agile body. Don't take direct attacks and crush opponents with strength. Instead, nimbly deflect your opponent's attacks to the side, and unleash an elegant, precise strike. If you can do that, you will grow far stronger than your current self. After saying that, he thanked her once more and leisurely left without looking back. Raina bit her lip and slammed the table, filled with thoughts. The Tarun family is the symbol of strength. I'm simply following tradition, not because I'm mindful of others. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized, no, he's right, because I was obsessed with becoming someone worthy of the Tarun name. The consequences have been unconsciously transferred to my sword. He simply saw through it. When I was young, everyone praised me as a genius, and no one gave me real advice. She picked up a leaf. Zeke Draker, who are you, really? While walking home, he reflected on what happened. All of my healing school skills have changed. Their performance is insane. How am I still okay even after staying up all night to train? In his past life, he had thought of this place as hell. But now, as a legitimate true blood awakened, this place had become paradise. Zeke's expression became delighted. Money and power aren't everything. But there's nothing like this. Suddenly, someone called his name from behind. Turning around, he saw Owen and a group of people. So, you're also taking special classes? Owen Zimmons was the third young master of the Zimmons family, one of the 3 great families. Because scheming was the Zimmons family specialty, he had used others to bully him, and cunningly maintained his image. Seeing that he didn't respond, he asked another question. I invited you to dinner last night, but you didn't reply. Did you not receive the invitation? Zeke didn't interrupt, only wondering why he was acting so friendly now. Zeke put his hand to his chin and smirked. Oh, that thing on my desk? Owen, with a straight face, asked back, why didn't you reply? Zeke lightly answered, well, you're funny, aren't you? Why should I reply? The moment he spoke those words, a large foot stomped heavily on the ground. The man smiled and rubbed his wrists threateningly. You're really rude, even though the young master has been so kind. Zeke Draker. Unfortunately for the man, Zeke was a tough nut. Who's this? He asked and sighed. Turning to leave, it seems those from the cradle aren't worth anything. I understand that you want to show off in front of your young master. But remember who you're talking to. The man didn't say anything and used aura to attack, but Zeke blocked it with one hand. It seems the upperclassmen have the ability to manipulate basic aura. The large man stretched out his arms and shouted, my name is Durbin Roswell. Here, they call me Mighty Durbin. On behalf of young Master Owen, I'll teach you a lesson. Zeke Draker, using aura, smirked. Mighty Durbin? A student who isn't even a knight has a nickname. Ridiculous. He rushed forward like the wind and punched him straight in the stomach, sending the self-proclaimed mighty man flying for dozens of meters. Zeke rotated his wrists. After Mighty Durbin, who's next? Choose quickly. Young Master Owen. Owen stepped forward and whispered in his ear. You really like basking in glory, don't you? Zeke Draker. After saying that, he dragged his followers away, leaving Zeke bewildered. The Draker Academy was mainly divided into two classes. There was the normal class, which taught that if you lacked talent, you had to overcome it with effort. And so they followed a strict regimen from early morning to late night. Then there was the special class, which could freely choose subjects outside of the basics. Even in the academy, where the greatest talents gathered, the special class was special. So, Zeke had some expectations, but most of the people here were just former cradle students. A special class? It's just the cradle class. The instructor on the podium spoke loudly. Quiet. To encourage the new students of the special class. A very special person is visiting today. Not only was he the chief commander in the East Empire War 20 years ago, but he was also the hero who stopped the Empire's invasion with just his ingenuity. Please welcome General Howard Draker. Howard Draker, also the principal of this academy, had gray hair and a gentle smile. He raised his hand to greet them. It's a pleasure to meet you, young gentleman. War hero Howard Draker. They revered him as a war hero and a tactical genius. But the truth is that the information he leaked to the enemy for his own survival accidentally caused the enemy to fall into chaos. He's just a lucky traitor. Zeke looked away in disgust. That rat isn't a hero at all. He's the mastermind who caused me to be expelled from the academy. I lost the only place left that I could return to and eventually wandered around the Duchy of Troy. Eventually, I was captured by slave traders and sold to the Southern Cartel. I will make you suffer enough. After greeting them, he left the class. The instructor continued the class. I believe you have all memorized the principal's words. Now, we will begin the basic class immediately. So take your swords and go to the arena. The class said in unison. Yes, sir. At the indoor arena of the special class, they gathered to learn. Zeke wasn't very interested. Who would have thought that even the special class had to learn the basics of dragon slaying? In his past life, just because he couldn't use aura, he had spent 2 years learning things that one could learn in 3 months. Another person was appointed to teach the class. The blonde-haired teacher introduced himself. Welcome, students. I am Andre Draker, and I will teach you the basics of dragon slaying. The students below were confused. They whispered to each other. Who is that? He's too young. That's the official Draker family uniform. Only Zeke knew. That's the Rose Knight Andre. Although he isn't a pure-blooded awakener. He graduated early from Valhalla with the title of valedictorian. He's a rare genius in a century to be given the Draker surname. Even the teacher of the special class is on a different level. He was also famous for his rigid, inflexible personality. Andre's face turned ashen, his eyes bloodshot as he said the word, quiet. The whole class was frightened and didn't dare make any noise. He continued, if you're done talking, I'll start the class. You, draw your swords. Everyone drew their thin swords from their waists. Except for Zeke, who drew his large long sword from behind his back. Hey, what's with that sword? Andre frowned slightly and called him to the arena. Student, don't you know that you have to choose a sword that fits your body? Zeke sighed. I knew this would happen. so I deliberately tried to make an impression when drawing my sword. But it was no use. He looked up and replied, "I can defeat you with this sword. Sir, it's better to show him skill." His face became as scary as it was before. Activate mental fortitude school defensive skill. Andre Draker gently drew his sword. "I understand, student, if you want to learn with your body. If your sword touches my body even a little, you will not only be excused from your rudeness, but you will also be excused from this basic dragon slaying class." Chap 10. But it also comes from the dragon slaying arts class. Don't worry, I don't intend to use aura on a student. Zeke was pleased. Oh ho, free from class. I can win against Andre because I know his weakness. But with Abel watching me, it would be dangerous if I drew more attention like back in the cradle. I'll graze his clothes and then give up. Thinking that, he swung his sword quickly. But it was blocked by the teacher's sword. As expected of a blue knight. This won't be easy. Zeke moved extremely quickly to all the corners. But Andre easily blocked each of them. Moreover, he didn't move an inch. The students below were amazed. A Draker knight is on a completely different level. 30 minutes have passed, and he hasn't even managed to graze his clothes. The sword in Zeke's hand had begun to shake. Both sides were exhausted. Andre Draker clenched his teeth. What ridiculous stamina. Even though I'm suppressing my aura, I can't believe I'm losing to a student. Indeed, the existence of true blood is unfair. Zeke had seen through his weakness. His poor stamina was still the same, and suppressing his aura even further was not beneficial. The Draker family's method of cultivating aura was famous for its uniqueness. You had to activate aura during training, during daily activities, and even while eating and sleeping. Basically, you had to maintain it like breathing. In other words, for Andre, he was basically holding his breath. His inconvenient swordsmanship also consumed more stamina. But losing like this didn't feel right. There was no other way, he had to force him to use aura. Creating an easy situation was useless. He needed something to make him use aura unconsciously. In other words, an extreme situation. Zeke activated the agile footwork skill. Andre immediately realized, but he didn't expect it. How could a student use agile footwork? While the teacher was careless, Zeke had appeared behind him and activated critical hit. In the moment the sword was about to fall on his head, Andre unconsciously used dragon slaying arts to dodge the move. Chapter 1, Verse 1, Slice through the sky. Seeing the teacher use aura, the students became excited, because he didn't have time to dodge. He took the full brunt of that move, causing his whole body to be injured. Damn it, that hurts. His body activated the auto-heal skill. Now I can feint, he thought. Pretending to faint, Andre Draker sheathed his sword and announced, "This student doesn't need to audit the class anymore. Are there any other students who want to be excused?" The entire class was silent. "I'll take that as a no." Andre continued the class. "Now then, raise your swords. From now on, the students will see one." Zeke Draker was taken to the infirmary and given first aid. Although he was injured, he was very happy, if you had to say. That was a pretty good performance. Although he didn't manage to graze his clothes, he managed to make Andre use the aura that he said he wouldn't use, and acknowledge his abilities. In the end, Andre had been taught a lesson, and he got free time. Both sides had won. Andre's final attack was the most basic move of the dragon slaying arts. Chapter 1, Verse 1, Slice through the sky. However, because it was unleashed by a blue knight, its force wasn't very spectacular. Even so, he could still defeat a blue knight, thanks to his unlimited stamina and healing. But that wasn't enough to live freely. To not be restricted, he needed to obtain unstoppable power. The power so that he didn't have to lose to anyone. Therefore, a strange voice pulled him back to reality. A long-haired man drinking alcohol stood next to his bed. He smiled and said, "So you're Arthur's youngest son. You have eyes just like that arrogant bastard." Arthur. Zeke jumped. Who is this freak? I can't detect him, even with his strong smell of alcohol. Not to mention, how dare he call the current head of the Draker house like that? He spoke up. Who are you? He didn't answer right away, but instead asked back, how did you do that earlier, kid? And took a sip of alcohol? He was obviously acting as he pleased. He asked again, what do you mean? He placed the bottle on the table, feigning ignorance. Huh? Earlier you had internal injuries. How did they heal so quickly? He stared at him intently. Zeke sweat. He became more wary. Did he discover auto-heal? Mental fortitude school defensive skill has activated. No, I can't reveal it. No one in the academy knows about healing. He He denied the claim. He asked again, "So you're going to keep acting like that?" and attacked him with his hand. Reflexively, he dodged the attack and threw the blanket in his face. Then he activated a series of combat skills. The sword he held was ready. If he didn't kill him, he would be killed. He easily grabbed the blade. Your ability to adapt to the situation is impressive. It's just like a mercenary. He took Zeke's sword, and with his free hand, snatched the blanket away. Zeke was already in a fighting stance, extremely wary of this man. Just who is this freak? A mercenary? Does he know anything about my past life? In contrast, Duke was completely relaxed, playing with the sword in his hand as he said, a Draker relinquishing his sword and retreating. "I think you're more suited to be a mercenary than a knight." Then he threw the sword back to him. Zeke quickly caught it. What's his intention? He had never been like this since meeting his master. He was certain after that brief exchange that there was an insurmountable gap between their abilities. So large that if he wanted to, he could easily kill him. He's at least a red knight. He pointed at the item in Zeke's hand and asked, "That two-handed sword is basic equipment from the cradle, right? You have that talent. Why are you using that weapon?" "No, maybe you're even stronger." The tense atmosphere was broken when the door creaked open. Zeke turned around and saw it was Andre. The man who had been talking to him turned out to be the groundskeeper. "Dexter, that tenacious bastard. How did you know I was here?" Dexter asked. "I was in the training room earlier." "You're quick-witted to the point of being annoying." Andre glanced at Zeke and said, "If you've been treated, you can leave, student." As he prepared to leave the room, Dexter spoke. "Kid, if you have time, come to the west greenhouse of the academy. I'll teach you something useful." He was silent for a moment before arrogantly refusing. "No thanks." He cursed and ranted. "Look at your mouth. That attitude is just like Arthur's." Zeke didn't care, closing the door gently. The groundskeeper. "Dexter? Who are you trying to fool? If you're at the level where you can call the current head of the Draker family Arthur Draker, so casually, then you must be the one who only had one disciple. Andre, throughout his entire life. Duke Draker, the Storm Knight, one of the Black Knights with the martial prowess to single-handedly stand against an entire kingdom. He was a hot topic when he suddenly disappeared one day. I didn't expect that he was living in seclusion in the academy. Perhaps it's because of him that Andre came here. Duke was said to be a man with a terrifying determination. There were even rumors that he obtained the title of Black Knight simply because he liked the color black. That's probably just a silly rumor. Currently, Duke was showing a strong interest in him. But receiving ordinary instruction just out of simple interest wasn't something he was interested in learning. If I'm going to learn something, I should at least learn his secret technique. I'll transform that interest into determination. After Andre's class, the next class was with the magic theory professor. He lectured enthusiastically. In cases like this, do you know what will happen? But it seemed few were interested. Most were lying on their desks in exhaustion, letting the teacher monologue on the podium. Haha. Then, when a mana formula is created, due to resistance, you will be truly injured. Zeke raised his hand and asked, and I don't understand the energy transfer mana law you mentioned earlier. Seeing someone listen to him, he was so happy that he seemed to radiate light, his eyes glowing. I'm sorry. This is the first time I've received a question. Then, he painstakingly re-explained the concept of mana transfer. During the break, the other students constantly complained about the previous theory class. Why are we learning about magic theory at a night academy? It's really sleep time. Only Zeke was satisfied. That was an easy-to-understand lecture. He wasn't an ordinary professor. He went to leave. The professor called him back, smiling awkwardly. It's just that it's been a long time since I felt like I was teaching a real class. Thanks to you. So, if you have any questions, come to my research lab at any time. I'm still a former scholarship student of Delphoa Magic University, so I know a lot. Hearing that, Zeke Draker was a bit surprised. He had thought he wasn't an ordinary magician, but he didn't expect that he was a former student of Delphoa Magic University, the country of magic's origins. Thinking that, he smiled. I understand, Professor. Being friendly with a professor wasn't a bad thing. Mages were good at mathematics and were often flexible thinkers. They were better colleagues than knights. Fanon, let's see if he's useful. Zeke went to the courtyard and saw Duke was lying on a chair using his hand as a pillow. He was more impatient than he thought. It had only been about a week. He pulled the book covering his face down and asked, "Done already, kid?" He asked back, "Why are you?" Before he could finish asking, he was interrupted. He sat up abruptly. Why aren't you coming to the greenhouse? You must understand what I mean by teaching you something useful." Zeke sighed. "I told you, I'm not interested." Dexter jumped up and shouted. "What? Why?" startling him. "I know that you're very talented. But I'm currently busy with personal training." He laughed loudly. "Of course, personal training can't be neglected. You think I'd say that?" Dexter tapped his head, causing his vision to narrow and completely blank. Opening his eyes again, he had been transported to another place. "I didn't expect that he'd knock me out." It seems waiting a week was too long for him. He looked around and saw that he was in the garden. So this was the West greenhouse. Dexter was watering plants and chugging alcohol. "You're awake, kid?" Zeke spoke up. "Did you kidnap me?" He squatted down to be level with him, laughing loudly as he said, "That's right, I kidnapped you. I'm a bit interested in you." "Kid." He wasn't even bothering to hide it now. It seems he's quite impatient. He quickly activated his agile footwork skill and dashed away. Dexter didn't chase, instead laughing as if teasing a child, even though he was moving very quickly. In just 1 second, Duke was standing in front of him. Boo! Time and time again, he easily captured Zeke. He was still treating him like a joke. "I need something to ignite the fire." Zeke Draker finally stopped to talk. "What do I have that interests you so much?" Taking a sip of alcohol, Dexter finally answered. "I asked you how you healed your internal injuries so quickly." The youngest Draker smirked. "So that's what's bothering him? If you're so curious, then make me answer." Dexter put his hand to his chin and then, poof, disappeared into thin air. He disappeared. Where is he? It turned out that he had transformed into a tornado along with his sword. Engaging him in battle. "What are you doing?" he asked. Dexter reappeared, answering, "You told me to make you answer. But that's too easy. Let's bet. If you can graze my clothes, I'll give you one wish. But if you give up in this fight, you'll have to tell me everything that you're hiding." The fresh garden was now desolate. Dexter looked around. "What are you made of, kid? It's been 3 hours already." Not only does he have good stamina and endurance, but his stamina and injuries also recover without limit. That kid. Zeke was also exhausted. He had been continuously activating his healing school skills. "I can do this all day. But I can't win the bet. Dragon Way, might, presence. It seems dangerous, so I've never used it. But against a Black Knight, it won't be a problem." He regained his spirit. "Let's continue." Seeing that determined look, Knight Duke Draker was extremely excited. "Good, that's how it should be." The agile footwork skill was activated. He dashed forward like lightning with his sword in hand, but Dexter easily dodged it. He was very excited. He's repeating his attacks. He might be fast, but compared to that tenacious glutton and that Tarun girl, he's nothing. But this malice. His malice exceeds even his perseverance. I'm too fascinated by it. Should probably use a little aura. Huh? Dragon skill. Dragon Way, might, presence. Activated. Opening his eyes, Dexter saw the tip of the sword almost touching his face. He lightly pushed it away. Then with one blow, snapped the sword in half. Just now, did he block my vision? But it will also be hard for him to find me. During the brief moment, Zeke had moved behind him, planning to end the battle with a single knife. But Dexter detected it. He disappeared in a flash. Is this Duke's secret technique? A simple quick dash that causes a strong wind? Is this why he's called the Storm Knight? In an instant, Duke Draker was next to his ear. Hey, then he was in front of him. His hand already balled into a fist. Let's call this a draw. Kid, he said, punching him and causing him to cough up blood. The system displayed, due to excessive use of skills, your persistence has exceeded the acceptable limit. For your safety, your consciousness will be forcibly cut off. Immediately, his mind went blank and everything went dark. Waking up, he found himself in his room. Duke brought me back? Zeke fell back in exhaustion. I was so close to winning. As expected of a Black Knight, he thought he had done everything he could in the present, but it was useless. He had tried to make Duke careless by repeating attacks hundreds of times and, at the decisive moment, created an opening with Dragon Way, might, presence, in addition to using Dragon Eyes to attack him. But it still wasn't enough. The skill that Duke used at the last moment was definitely his secret technique. It's true that I lost consciousness due to excessive use of dragon skills. But thanks to that, I was able to see his secret technique, the absurd high-speed movement technique that he uses. With his extremely trained body, that secret technique was definitely the thing that helped Andre, who had poor stamina, reach the position of Red Knight. It's a pity that I lost the chance to learn his secret technique. But it's still worth it. Dragon way, might, presence. With pressure to the point that even a black knight hesitated. Most of those small fries would prostrate themselves as soon as they came into contact with this skill. While he was contemplating, the system jumped up with a notification. You have one unread message. Confirm or deny. Skill agile footwork, D, has been promoted to skill high-speed movement, C. Your soul has evolved due to the manifestation of your strong will. Along with the evolution of the soul, your system functions have been activated. Can activate the next function by using karma points. Mini-map requires 20 points to unlock. Storage requires 20 points. Novice quest book requires 45 points to unlock. Current karma points is 40. After thinking for a while, he decided to check the storage first. If you choose the item you want, it will be stored in the storage. When taking the items out of the storage, you can think of the name or shape of the item. The scope of space that the item occupies in the storage depends on the size and weight of it. If you want to have a larger storage, you can use karma points to increase the size of your storage. He touched the sword while reading those lines. Then putting the item into the storage must be the same. Store. 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 The two-handed sword had disappeared and taken up 2 out of the 28 slots in the storage. So that was what the system meant when it said, the scope of space that the item occupies in the storage depends on the size and weight of it. To take it out, he needed to think of its name or shape. The sword really reappeared in his hand. Zeke smiled in satisfaction. I thought about a subspace storage space. But this is even better. That treasure is very expensive. Obviously. But very hard to find something to put it into. And I can even expand the storage space by using points. This overly advantageous function was just the beginning. What would it be like when he ranked up higher? If the value of these points were so high, then he couldn't use them recklessly. It seems that I have to change my plans. There was a voice outside the door. May I come in, master? There's a message for you. He took out a small letter. He said that you'll know who it's from if I say groundskeeper Dexter. Zeke smiled lightly. It seems it wasn't a complete failure. The letter read, Kid, if you want to challenge me again, you're welcome anytime. So that was what he meant by draw. In any case, it meant that the opportunity was still there. Decker bowed and continued, I have one more thing to tell you. Master, I found the blacksmith you mentioned earlier, that is. There was a problem. The blacksmith rejected the appointment. He doesn't forge weapons anymore. Zeke stepped out of the carriage, looking at the house with nostalgia. It's been a long time. That really is a prestigious name for a forge. He opened the door. Is anyone inside? Inside the house, there was utter desolation, as if a battle had just taken place. Graham, the aura sword. It was the masterpiece that Galleon forged. He said it was the price for saving his life. Worthy of the title Soul Smith. It was known that he read the soul of the wielder before crafting a weapon for them. And he lived up to that reputation. Creating the sword with the ability that I needed most. The ability to replace aura with ether. The greatest blacksmith on the continent had forged that sword. Unlike the person that Zeke knew, he was now passed out drunk. What's his current state? Galleon looked up and saw a stranger. What's this? A kid. This isn't a place for kids. Get out. Although he was a very emotional person, he wasn't to this extent. What happened to him before meeting me? Zeke carried a bucket full of water and dumped it on the drunkard. Smiling brightly. Are you awake now? I want to know why you rejected my request. Seeing the Draker family's signature gauntlets. Galleon stuttered. Draker. Then he slammed his head on the table. I'm sorry for showing such disrespect. Please forgive my rudeness, but I don't accept any requests. How can a bum create something that someone wants when he can't even create something that he himself wants? Then, he was so frustrated that his hands trembled. So even Galleon goes through a phase like this. Now that he thought about it, he was already the greatest blacksmith on the continent when they met. And Galleon had never told him about his life before that. He covered his head, lamenting his uselessness, and begged for forgiveness for his rude actions. Zeke walked around the room. Don't worry, I want to see some of your failed products. Galleon stuttered. Please allow me to take you to the back. Sir, I apologize. Sir, I shouldn't have left everything so messy. In the courtyard, dozens of swords were planted in the ground. Large and small, it could be said to be very eye-catching. Zeke went in, choosing a sword. He panicked. Please be careful, sir. Even if they're failed products, they're very sharp. He tested each sword. This one, and this one. No, they're not failures. They're of equivalent quality to what he forged when he was hailed as the greatest blacksmith on the continent. Zeke used dragon eyes and immediately noticed the problem. Just as I thought, his furnace has a problem. Galleon Halbert was instantly stunned. Stuttering, how did you? Before he could finish, Zeke cut him off. I'm asking you, you've optimized your own forging style, right? It seems you've mixed some metals to create a lighter and more exquisite material. But the durability is too terrible. In cases like this, it's because the impurities aren't properly removed during the heat treatment. Galleon looked at the Draker Knight in front of him. How accurate. Not only did he immediately recognize my forging method, but he even analyzed the key faults and the reasons. If it's this person, perhaps. He took courage and asked, Sir, this may be a bit, very presumptuous, but I have a favor to ask. Galleon led Zeke inside the house and rummaged around. Would you please look at this first? Then, he took out a technical drawing and spread it on the table. He touched each line on it. This is Galleon's secret. The thing that he revealed many years later. The blueprints of a magic furnace. In his past life, he had said, what is there to hide from the person who saved my life? A furnace where the temperature can be freely adjusted with magic. This is my secret. Back in the present, Zeke smiled and said, with this, your forging method will work perfectly. Galleon gasped. As expected, I knew you'd recognize it right away. He wondered, you have the complete design. Why haven't you made it? Galleon paused. The most important part, the mana law design is there. But the implementation cost of the magic tower is 10,000 gold. An average family of 4 had a monthly cost of living of 10 gold. So it had taken him 10 years to scrape together that amount. Galleon continued, so I want to ask you for a favor. You're a Draker, and also a true blood awakened. So if you create this furnace for me, I will fulfill any request of yours for free and unconditionally until my last breath. He said with extremely earnest eyes. Zeke had some thoughts. This is difficult. It would be feasible if I were the family's protective knight. But it's impossible for me, even as a true blood, to receive support of 10,000 gold. But I can't give up Graham. The aura sword. What's troubling him is the mana law design. Wait, mana law design? He immediately agreed when he thought of it. Okay, I accept. Then he put the drawing into his shirt and turned to leave. I can ask a mage I know. I'll get back to you with an answer. He also warned him to stop drinking. Galleon was touched, his nose running, and repeatedly thanked him. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll serve you for life like a savior. Thank you, he said until Zeke was out the door. At the Draker Academy in the professor's research building, Zeke listlessly walked. Why do those bastards at the magic tower charge such a high implementation fee? The structure looks so simple. Fanon's specialty was mana law design. He was going to his research lab. His eyes suddenly fell on an alley, in which a group of students were bullying another student. The bullied one was begging. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Please, I apologize. Lord Conrad, that lowly me dared to touch your body. The overbearing Conrad stepped on the other's head and said, as a reward, I'll give you a chance to clean the ground you dirtied. That was the image that popped into Zeke's head at this moment when looking at that alley. Damn it, the students were now also bullying another victim in this situation. People like you just hinder others' existence. That Zeke bastard too. An unprecedented golden light reaction. A true blood awakening that surpasses everything. Damn it, Conrad got angrier the more he thought about it. And his behavior became more violent. Kicking repeatedly. It couldn't be helped that I lost to that lowly bastard. Because of that sneak attack before the match started. But why did that lucky trash somehow become a true blood awakened? He bit his lip until blood flowed. From behind, Zeke's voice rang out. Hey, Zit's face. Already found someone to replace me? I'll give you all 3 seconds. To be safe, you should bow your heads to the ground for me. Everyone was surprised. Conrad smirked, pointing directly at him. Your arrogance has flown over the roof since you awakened as a true blood. Zeke Draker, are you sure that you've really awakened true blood? Without letting him finish, Zeke interrupted. Shut up. If you don't bow down, then don't blame me. With just those words, Conrad was terrified by the invisible pressure. He was stunned. Just a few months ago, he was still crawling through my legs, but somehow I'm afraid. He still forced himself to endure and retorted. How dare you give me orders? You lowly piece of trash? What are you doing? Get him. All of his minions charged at the same time. Zeke wasn't as frightened as he was before, but stood calmly still. Don't blame me. You know? He took care of those minions one by one, each and every one of them. Conrad stood motionless. It can't be. This is really the Zeke Draker that I know? Before long, He had finished them all. He adjusted his sleeves while approaching the bully. "No need to be scared. I believe you already know, it'll only hurt for a moment." Conrad took out his sword and raised it in front of his face, shouting, "Stay away. If you come any closer, I'll cut you." Zeke wasn't afraid, his eyes sharpened even more. "You actually drew your sword outside the training grounds? You know what that means, right? To face the murderous intent of Leon Conrad, who has drawn his sword outside the sacred training grounds. I, Zeke Draker, will respond in the name of honor." Zeke drew his sword, and an immense pressure emanated from him. "The next battle will end with one of us dead." Hearing that, Conrad's limbs went weak. "All responsibility belongs to ourselves, and the opponent bears no responsibility for the results." "Liam Stone, you're the witness." Liam, his face swollen, didn't dare to make a sound. "Now then, let's continue." Conrad knelt down, stuttering. There was a puddle of water under him. "I'm sorry, Lord Zeke Draker. Please let me live," he begged, clasping his hands together. The mercenary Liam couldn't even crawl. Both looked extremely pathetic. Zeke remembered his past self also begging him like this. He put a hand in his pocket. "Dumb son of a bitch." Then he used a move to cut off his ear. "I'll take your ear as the price." Blood gushed out. Conrad wailed, covering the missing ear with his hand. "My ear?" Zeke put his hand on his head. "If your ear is reattached when we meet again, what I take next won't be your ear, but your head." Then he slammed his head into the blood and water puddle before turning to leave. Liam struggled to prop himself up and asked, "Zeke, why did you help me?" Zeke smiled lightly. "Don't think about it. I'm not helping you, I'm helping myself." The moment Zeke Draker stepped out of that alley was the moment he left his weak self in the past behind, officially starting a new journey. He rubbed his head. Was it Galleon influencing me? I almost said something embarrassing. At the Draker Academy in Fanon's research lab, he had brought the blueprints for the professor to see. He examined it very carefully. "Let me be blunt, it can be said to be feasible." "Wait, I think it would be better if you listened to my explanation first. As you said, the overall structure is simple. However, the problem is the core responsible for the energy output. The core is considered the heart of this machine. But the mana circuit pathways have extremely complicated restrictions. Although it may be small, it requires enough energy, and we'll also need a way to adjust the output without delay. This is unprecedented. There are two options, based on the conditions of the core. I can personally adjust your design, however. It will take at least a decade to revise the design for the core. No. It'll take 15 years. Zeke was surprised. 15 years? Fanon emphasized. Yes, it will consume a significant amount of time. As for the second method, we can skip the core design and use similar materials. But although doing so can save a lot of time, the material needed is high compression mana stone. Zeke shouted in alarm. What? Isn't that an ancient treasure that can't be created with modern technology? Fanon explained further. Exactly. Ancient treasures are already rare. However, searching for treasures in ruins is even harder. To find mana stone that can withstand our design, it will cost over 3,000 gold. Hearing that, Zeke Draker despaired. I might get booted if someone finds out I can't use aura. But 15 years is too long. However, 3,000 gold is too much. Unbelievable. I can't give up Graham. The aura sword. Most people thought that he was a mana user thanks to what happened during the blessing ceremony. But it was just a reaction created by healing and ether. The fact that he couldn't use aura hadn't changed. Ether was considered a power that was difficult to control by humans, however. Except for the mana sense skill that his master had taught him. He couldn't use any sword skills that utilized aura. Even with that skill, he could only enhance and swing his entire body. Compared to others, aura was much easier to use and more versatile. That was why he needed Graham. The aura sword. Damn it, how am I going to find high compression mana stone? In contrast to Zeke's emotions, Fanon was very excited. By the way, the creator of these design drawings is extraordinary. Even considering the complex core, it's still a superior design. It would be difficult to create, even in the golden treasures of that era. Hearing that, Zeke became interested again. Yeah, why didn't I think of it before? He stood up immediately. Please protect the design until I return. Professor, what do you mean? Do you want me to spend 15 years perfecting it? He laughed out loud. Of course not. I'll bring one. The Golden Age, the Liberation War, fighting to escape the rule of the dragons. It ended with the defeat of the evil dragon, Bahamut, by Tarakan Draker, giving humanity a century of peace. During that time, many ancient treasures were discovered in the dragon's lair. They were relics of the era of hero kings, the peak era of magic. All the treasures that were discovered had techniques and magic far beyond modern standards. Among them was high compression mana stone, containing enough mana to sustain an entire village, a treasure from the era of hero kings. At the Draker Academy, the central library, although rarely used, the central library was still maintained, as it was believed to have been personally established by Tarakan. During the expansion of the record room, the treasures from the Golden Age were discovered. This led to the involvement of the Magic Tower and the Archmage Nirvana, a member of the three great families. In the excavation, in those months, countless treasures from the Golden Age were discovered, and news of it was spread through the continental newspapers. Or at least, that was what would happen 10 years from now. Central Library, the record room. Zeke walked around and looked around the library. No one had discovered the treasures, or even was aware of them. I could poke around all day and still might not find it. He activated the dragon skill, Dragon Eyes. He used the skill to go around everywhere, and finally found it. Here it is. He went to that spot and tapped on the bricks on the floor. It will have a hollow sound when tapped. Yes, it's this one. Zeke used Ether Sense. Slice. The only application of Ether to the Mana Sense skill that I learned from my master. Because Ether materializes the will of the user, it's possible to apply certain attributes, such as cutting, and use it in different situations. However, it has limitations. That is, the user must consume a large amount of ether to perform any action. It seems that using it is still too much for me. Zeke frowned and supported his forehead. Then he lifted the brick and crawled down below. The report didn't say it was this deep. While walking, he heard a noise. He quickly extinguished the fire, crouched down, and slowly looked in the direction of the noise. It should take at least a decade before someone discovers these ruins. Could it be that someone has already found it? But when he looked out, he saw two skeletons. They were holding pickaxes and shovels. Okay, it wasn't created by history. If so, he took out his sword and used the activated critical hit skill. Then this is easy. With just one slash, he was able to easily cut off the heads of the two skeletons. Then the system board jumped up. Because you have defeated two skeletons, you have received 2 karma points. He exclaimed in surprise. Oh, the system continued to announce. Skeletons defeated 2. Karma points currently owned 22. Zeke realized. That's right. I can get points from killing monsters. I completely forgot because I was focused on treasures. Wait a minute, isn't this a good opportunity to farm points? He excitedly grabbed his sword and ran off to find monsters. I'm coming, my precious points. By now, he had killed 20 skeletons. He delightfully looked at the system board. That was easy. I'll have to consider carefully in case I find something to use points to unlock. The novice quest book was 45 and the minimap is 20. Dragon skill Devour and the locked level 2 skill both require 50 points. It seems that I can only buy the minimap right now. He took it out and used the minimap. He stared at it and examined it. It's similar to a magic map. What's this? He clicked it and the map was converted from 2D to 3D. He happily exclaimed in surprise. Awesome, this is what I wanted. He pointed to the only red room on the map. But, why is only that room a different color? The system appeared in front of him. Would you like to route to the selected location of a DRAGONSLAYER? The storage room? Zeke was utterly shocked. The storage room? It took the search team many days to find this place. But I found the location so easily? He clicked select yes. The system announced to him. We will now provide the fastest route to your designated location. It marked the route on the map for him to see. He laughed loudly. Haha, unbelievable. With this, how can I get lost? After walking for a while, he finally arrived at his designated location. He stood before a massive red door. He looked up at it. I guess I'm here. But, how to get inside this place? It seemed that he couldn't open it by just pushing it. He put his hand on the door, searching for a way to enter. Suddenly, the door lit up. He hurriedly pulled back his hand. A security spell. The reason for the Magic Tower and Archmage Nirvana being related was probably because of this door. If it wasn't for the gauntlets, he would have lost his hand. He wouldn't be able to get past the spell. System, you can't open it for me? The system announced to him. We have received the administrator's request. Accordingly, we will connect to the security device. The deactivation of the security spell has failed. We will now switch to activating the master device. Zeke exclaimed in shock. What? Wait, Are you responding to what I just said? The system replied to his question. Yes, I did. Do you have any further requests? Administrator Zeke Draker? He pondered silently. I can talk to the system. If so, then, why force me to reincarnate? The system replied. I am unable to answer the previously stated question. He asked another question. What is this administrator system? The system repeated the same answer as before. He continued to ask. Who created you? The system repeated the same answer as before. He could only sigh in helplessness. Damn it, I didn't get any answers to the important questions. Just open the door. The system replied. We have confirmed the administrator's request. Grave of the Dragon Slayers. The storage room has been opened. He walked inside, looking around. Wow, this whole place is treasure chests. He exclaimed in surprise. Treasure chests, as the name implies, were chests filled with treasure and valuable items. To find even one treasure could be considered a miracle. He laughed, opening a chest to check it. Haha, so there are hundreds of these things. I'll take this. Oh, this is good. I'll give this to Fanon. He paused, looking at the object inside the chest. Finally found it. High compression mana stone. What's more, there were 4 of them. So that was even better. I'll use 1 point to expand the storage by 4 more slots. I still don't have enough space to hold everything. It seems I'll have to come back often until graduation. That should be enough for today. But when he stood up to leave, the air around him started to change. He warily looked around. Huh? What's this ominous feeling? He tried to touch the wall and his entire body was surrounded by magic circles. What's this? Then suddenly he disappeared from where he was standing. Zeke teleported to a different place. He asked in astonishment. System, where is this? The system replied. The administrator is currently in the sacred place of the Dragon Slayers. Zeke looked up. The sacred place of the Dragon Slayers. Huh? The reports didn't say anything about a room full of coffins. He took out a miniature map and studied it. As expected, it's not too far from the previous location. But there are no paths leading to the sacred place of the Dragon Slayers. If so, then this must be a location I didn't discover in my previous life. I can't ignore this. Zeke went to a coffin and opened its lid. Armor. The system popped up. Dragon Slayer exclusive equipment discovered. Zeke lifted the armor and examined it. Dragon Slayer exclusive equipment. It certainly doesn't look like any of the armor from the Golden Age that I know. What's this? A hole? To plug something in? He was surprised. Could it be? He took out an item. But I can't just leave it like this. Can I? The system announced. Spirit Stone Pin installed into Dragon Slayer exclusive equipment. Activating equipment. Zeke smirked. But the Dragon Slayer exclusive equipment didn't stand firm. It wobbled as if about to fall. He frowned in confusion. Huh? What's wrong? The system said. Equipment malfunctioning due to overload. Activation failed. A small explosion is expected shortly. Please evacuate quickly. Zeke sat down hard on the ground. His face covered in dust. Speechless with the system. It already exploded. The system said apologetically. I'm sorry. Zeke stood up and looked at the Dragon Slayer exclusive equipment smoking beside him. So, a high compression spirit stone is just the power source for this armor? I wonder what functions it has that require such a massive power source. I'll ask Fanon later. I'll just keep exploring for now. Empty rooms. Empty rooms. This is the last room. He looked at the only glass cage inside the room. Just one glass cage in the whole room? But when the system informed him what it was, his eyes widened in shock. What? Terrakin Dranker? He's really insane. What's inside the glass cage is Terrakin Dranker's legacy. The cursed heart of the evil dragon Bahamut. He left the heart of the dragon he defeated as a legacy? So, the eerie feeling I sensed in the storage before was from this? But it's different now. The system appeared before him. Cursed heart of the evil dragon Bahamut. Reacting to the administrator. A voice suddenly appeared in his head. Alright, I hear you. It seems there's no other choice. Fine, I'll kill them all. Initiating indomitable spirit defense skill. A chuckle echoed. Heh. Zeke was stunned and surprised. Why am I? The eye on his left turned black. He yelled. What's going on? What is this? The atmosphere around him began to change. The system announced. Sudden quest. Quest reward, Terrakin's ownership. Initiating indomitable spirit defense skill. Error. Skill activation failed. Both of Zeke's eyes were now black. Zeke slammed his head against the glass case. He smirked, looking at the person who looked just like him inside the glass case. Muttering incessantly. So annoying. You talk about freedom? Freedom is something you have to take. You idiot. Finally, the glass cage shattered. Inside his body, there was a flame. The system simultaneously announced, "You have overcome the curse of the cursed heart of the evil dragon Bahamut. Sudden quest completed. Quest reward, Terrakin's legacy ownership has been acquired." Zeke slumped to the ground, panting. I almost died there. I can't believe my skill activation failed. What was that just now? Initiating class-specific skill. Self-healing. Initiating class-specific skill. Endless stamina. Beginning absorption of the cursed heart of the evil dragon Bahamut. His whole body was covered in wounds. He looked up at the light source in front of him. What's this? Pure, concentrated spirit energy, flying straight into me. But I don't have a spirit loop to receive it. Boundless spirit energy. Nowhere to go. It's destroying my body. I have to do something. Zeke gritted his teeth. Soul body absolute art. Seal. He wrapped the spirit energy in ether and sealed it in the ether compartment. After a while, the place where Zeke was standing had created a small crater. He breathed heavily and looked ahead. Phew, I'm alive, I guess. He put his hands in his pockets and went to look at the shattered glass cage. The heart was gone. So, that spirit energy was Bahamut's. A piece of mirror reflected the mark on his body. What's this? He touched the mark. Is this how I sealed Bahamut's spirit energy? The system jumped out and informed him. You have absorbed the cursed heart of the evil dragon Bahamut. The absorbed spirit energy has refined the administrator's body. The administrator's physique has transformed into a celestial bone body. Detecting that the administrator's power is unmanageable. 95% of power is compressed and sealed. As the inheritor, you have received access to Terrakin Dranker's secure storage. Activating Novice Questbook. Providing guidance for low-level administrators. Zeke said, Celestial Bone Body. Terrakin Dranker's secure storage. Guidance. Another bunch of weird things. As usual, he scratched his head and looked at the text on the system. I'll check it out later. For now, let's clear. He stopped mid-sentence. He pointed to a spot on the miniature map and instructed the system. Wait, leave this one. He couldn't help but exclaim. My ancestors were really generous. The system asked him, do you want to open another legacy of Terrakin Dranker? After that, the system announced, unlocking Terrakin Dranker's second legacy. As soon as Zeke saw it, his eyes widened in shock. This is, after obtaining the second legacy. He returned to the Platinum Tower, changed his clothes, and pondered, let's take a closer look. Dragonkin Language Arts. Imbues your words with power. Looking at his status panel, he felt there were many expansions. Let's see what else. Sovereignty. Grants dominion over the dragonkind, allowing summoning and command of subdued dragonkind. Celestial Bone Body. Optimizes physical abilities. Accelerates martial arts learning, and enhances ether conductivity. Just descriptions don't tell me much. And I've already glanced at it before. It's not just Terrakin's second legacy, there's a system window related to Terrakin. So, he called the system. Let me see the notifications related to Terrakin again. Then, the system announced, to access Terrakin's secure storage, data synchronization is required. Please move to a data synchronization point. Do you want the synchronization location displayed on the miniature map? Seeing the things he had to do made Zeke frustrated. What? So, I have to go to the designated location to access it? Show me the location. Then, the system showed him a map displaying the location. He realized, this is Valhalla, the top knight training academy. No one other than authorized individuals can approach, let alone enter. Even for me, sneaking into Valhalla is impossible. Going to Valhalla wasn't in my plan. But if there's something like Terrakin's legacy there, it's worth modifying my plan. It seems I have to stay in this cursed family longer. Next, he used Novice Quest Book activated, beginning guidance for low-level administrators. After the guidance, quests will be available to support the administrator's growth. Completing quests will earn rewards. So, I accept quests and get rewarded upon completion. A structure similar to adventurer guilds or mercenary jobs. But what is the guidance? He didn't know. Suddenly, the system appeared and announced, beginning guidance for low-level administrators. Immediately, the space around him changed. This made Zeke wonder, looking around and asking himself, what? Where am I? Did I teleport like last time? No, this feeling is very different. As if the entire space has changed. Suddenly, many orcs appeared behind him. Just then, the system explained, guidance quest. Defeat the monsters that appear within the specified time using at least 2 skills. Reward. Merchandise store access points. Time limit, 60 minutes. Through the events just now, Zeke finally realized, orcs suddenly appear, and a corresponding quest is set up alongside it. So, this guidance creates situations where I can actively use the system? This should have been provided sooner. Then, he began to move, attacking the orc monsters and using skills. High-speed movement, activating consecutive slashes. With just those skills, they were completely defeated and torn to pieces. After that, he felt the dual swords felt as light as a feather. Besides, there was also the celestial bone body, which optimizes physical abilities, accelerates martial arts learning, and enhances ether conductivity. So, this is the effect of the celestial bone body. At this level, I can easily defeat commander-level enemies. When the monsters had been completely defeated, the system announced, guidance quest completed, and he was teleported back to his original spot. Zeke saw the sword also disappeared. So he figured, so, it was all an illusion? The realism is no joke. Upon exiting the space, the system announced, additional critical hits have been added to the reward. Additional time has been added to the reward. Quest reward. 40 points in classification. The store has been unlocked. Seeing the store had been unlocked, he was delighted because he could buy items through the system. What's this? This is so convenient. Giant hide. Powerful breath of the fire giant. All are rare treasures worth hundreds of gold. Just reselling the items in the store would be enough for me to make a fortune. Then, the system spoke. Please place the item you want to sell in the designated window. Items stored in your compartment can also be sold. Practice dual sword. This item cannot be sold. Elf dagger. Do you want to sell this item? Selling price, 4 points. Seeing that, Zeke pondered, but selling seems to only apply to ancient treasures. 4 points for this dagger. I can earn at least 100 gold at auction. Selling items won't benefit me unless I desperately need points. Phew, what a tiring day. Tonight, I'll probably sleep a long sleep. Then, he closed the training room door and went to sleep. The next morning, at Draken Academy, in the research building of the professors, Zeke brought something to the professor, causing him to ask in surprise, "You actually brought back a high compression spirit stone in just one day? How did you manage that?" Zeke answered while drinking tea. "It's a complicated story. When can the operating equipment be completed?" But the professor replied, "It's already completed." Hearing that, Zeke thought, "Of course, you're extraordinary." But the professor felt, Zeke bringing this thing here is even more extraordinary. Zeke thought about the professor. That's suspicious. Whenever high compression spirit stones are discovered, major forces on the continent register various ancient characters as serial numbers and manage the ownership of high-value spirit stones. So, by checking the serial number, you can determine the time of excavation, location, and current owner. But the thing I brought can't possibly be registered in that book. It's a completely new discovery of my own. Ignoring the suspicion, he has good evaluation skills. Then, Zeke quickly went to the professor, startling him and saying, "You verified the serial number. Let's start, right?" Hearing that, Zeke asked in surprise, "Oh, you knew too?" Seeing the professor like that made him feel the professor was too talented for this place. Then, the two went to Galleon's forge. Galleon said to them, "All right, I'll activate it." Then, his furnace glowed with magic. Seeing this, he was very excited, and the professor happily clapped and said, "Now, I have to go teach." Hearing that, Zeke said, "Thank you, Professor." After finishing everything, Galleon quickly came out beaming and said, "I never imagined I'd see a fully operational magic furnace in my life. Thank you so much, sir." Hearing that, Zeke politely said, "It's just a transaction, it doesn't need to be that much. You haven't forgotten the conditions we agreed on, have you?" Hearing him say that, Galleon quickly said, "Of course, please make your request." Then, Zeke opened the lid of a box and said, "Make me a sword with this." As soon as Galleon saw it, he was very surprised because it was a dragon fang, the hardest fang of Bahamut, the cursed evil dragon. Then, he picked it up and saw, "This size and condition, I've never seen anything like it. Where did you find it?" Zeke didn't answer directly but explained vaguely. It's very complicated to explain. In his heart, he thought, Terrican Draker's second legacy. From the heart to the teeth, it feels like grave robbing. At this time, Galleon bent down, trembling, and said, "You not only gave me a magic furnace but also gave me the opportunity to forge a dragon fang." Hearing that, Zeke looked down to see if he was okay. Then, Galleon suddenly became energetic and said loudly, "I will definitely repay your trust. I, Galleon Halberti, will risk my life for your sword." Hearing those words again made Zeke smile slightly, remembering the past because his words had put pressure on him at the time. But he was indeed reliable. "Let's see what kind of sword you'll make. I'm looking forward to it." After Zeke left, Galleon quickly started working. After finishing everything he needed to do, Zeke returned to the Platinum Tower and headed straight for his bedroom. He tiredly unbuttoned his shirt. Just as he thought, making a sword is really exhausting. It's been a week since I received the message, telling me to come back after the bet with Duke ends. Considering the timing, something is about to happen. Suddenly, he sensed someone's presence, so he quickly turned around. Duke spoke. "Why didn't you come this time, kid?" Seeing him, Zeke involuntarily trembled with fear upon seeing his angry appearance. Seeing Zeke just smile at him without saying anything made Duke even more uncomfortable. Glaring and saying, "Answer honestly." Seeing Duke's current appearance, he looked like he wanted to kill Zeke. Seeing that he couldn't avoid answering, Zeke quickly replied, "Well, you said to come back if I wanted to challenge. Naturally, since I didn't intend to do so, I didn't come." Hearing that, Duke quickly approached, grabbed Zeke's collar, and said, "I told you to be honest." Then, Duke threw Zeke out the window. This made Zeke panic because it was too high. At this height, I'll die instantly without a chance to heal. So, he tried to grab the railing to stop, but Duke was one step faster, grabbing Zeke's neck and saying, "You don't want to challenge me again? I don't think you're so clueless that you don't understand what I mean. Either way, it's the opposite. You didn't come after losing, and didn't even go to the infirmary, as if you were deliberately provoking me." Hearing those things made Zeke panic. What? He knew but still went along with it? Then, Duke said to him, "I'll give you 5 seconds. Answer honestly this time." Then, Duke started counting. 5, Zeke said with difficulty. "It's absurd." But Duke didn't care and continued counting. 4, 3, but Zeke continued to speak. "You didn't even reveal your real identity. Am I wrong, Dexter the gardener?" Hearing the answer he wanted made Duke smile and throw Zeke back into the room. This caused the wall supporting Zeke to crack. Then, Zeke quickly sat up and painfully rubbed his head and said, "Okay, you're right, kid. I was once a Black Knight of the Draker family. I am Duke Draker." Hearing that, Zeke quickly bowed respectfully to the elder of the family and former Black Knight. "Duke Draker, I sincerely apologize for the disrespect I have shown as a knight." Seeing that, Duke pointed and said, "What's with that expression that you knew it all along?" Zeke quickly replied, "Not at all, sir. But, Duke, you said you were a Black Knight. What do you mean?" Duke replied, "Simple. I used to be lustrous, but now I'm crimson." Hearing that, Zeke replied, "What? That's possible? A knight's rank can increase, but I've never heard of it decreasing." Seeing that they had been talking about irrelevant things, Duke quickly changed the subject. "Don't talk about that anymore." Seeing his hand trembling, Zeke understood the situation and replied, "Understood, since you've been honest with me. Duke, I'll be honest in return." After that, the two sat upright and talked to each other. Duke, sitting opposite Zeke, asked, "So, you guessed my identity from the beginning and deliberately provoked me to become an official disciple?" Zeke knelt and replied, "Yes, that's right." Hearing Zeke's thoughts made Duke laugh and say, "You're quite bold. Fine, I'll accept you as a disciple." Seeing him agree so quickly made Zeke panic. Just like that? Before he changes his mind. Then, Zeke began to speak. "I, Zeke Draker, offer my disciple's oath to the great Duke Draker, knight among knights. I swear to follow the teachings of my master with dedication, cultivate virtues of learning, and strive to uphold and elevate my master's honor." After hearing those words, Duke was a little surprised because, "You even know the disciple's oath? It's rarely used these days." Zeke quickly replied, "Cultural knowledge is a virtue of a knight, isn't it, sir? You cunning little rascal. I'll take that as a compliment. But, master, may I ask a question?" Hearing Zeke say that, Duke said, "Calling me master so quickly? Huh? Fine, ask away." Zeke then asked, "What did you find appealing in me that made you decide to accept me as a disciple?" Duke is famous for not accepting disciples. Even the genius of the century, Andre, had to beg for many years to become his only disciple. Why did he accept me so easily? I have a guess. He must have seen my potential in the bet. Something far beyond Andre's talent. He is clearly insightful. Hearing Zeke's question, Duke asked in return, "Why do you think? Guess. Disciple." Hearing that, Zeke replied confidently, "Of course, because I am the ultimate genius." Hearing Zeke's answer made Duke laugh and say, "Your confidence is admirable. If that were the reason, I would have accepted Raina as a disciple." Hearing this made Zeke disappointed and turned away. Then, Duke explained to Zeke, "Because you have determination. Not all those who are called geniuses can reach the level of Crimson or Black Knight. Those who grow up without setbacks will collapse easily before the smallest challenge." Hearing Duke's analysis, Zeke agreed. He's right. Many geniuses who were expected to at least reach Crimson Knight rank eventually stagnate at Violet or Blue. After satisfying Zeke's curiosity, Duke stood up and said, "Enough chatting, follow me. The first lesson starts right now." That made Zeke excited and replied, "Yes, master." Then, they went to the West Greenhouse training grounds. Seeing this place, Zeke was very surprised. Who would have thought there would be a place like this under the greenhouse? What is he planning to make me do? Duke told Zeke to run. So Zeke ran, but it had been 3 hours. At that moment, Duke suddenly told Zeke to stop. Hearing that, Zeke quickly stopped and asked, "So, I can stop running now?" Duke replied, "Yes, but I want to ask something." "Yes, master. What do you want to know?" Duke then went behind Zeke and said, "Not much." When Duke was about to grab Zeke's hand to check it, Zeke quickly protested and was pushed away. Looking at the wound on the palm of his hand, Duke saw, "Checking your energy doesn't seem easy. Alright, there's been something wrong from the beginning. In the infirmary, during the trial and even in the greenhouse during the bet. And just now, after 500 laps around the training grounds, I didn't feel any aura from you. When I tried to check your meridians, you avoided it. Kid, don't tell me you can't use aura." Hearing Duke's words, Zeke stood motionless in shock, not saying a word. Zeke remained silent, unable to speak. Duke continued to ask. The bronze statue reacted, didn't it? As he moved closer, he continued nonchalantly. "An unprecedented golden light caused a commotion and brought you here." Hearing those words, Zeke's hands trembled. Reaching Zeke's front, Duke paused. Then, looking down at Zeke, smiled slyly and asked, "So?" He paused again. "Why did you prevent me from checking your meridians?" Zeke turned his head away, not answering Duke's question. His cold gaze glanced at the face that was close to his. Looking at that provocative face, he thought to himself, "It's curiosity, not suspicion. A Draker who can't use aura is a serious situation, but it seems his interest is paramount." Clenching his fist, he gritted his teeth, telling himself, "Lucky for me, I'm dealing with Duke. Once I get Graham, I won't be suspected of lacking aura. Until then, I must be cautious." There was no need to weave a long, drawn-out lie, unlike in his previous life, when he was the first failed awakener of the family. With that thought, he removed the glove he was wearing and calmly said to Duke, "You're right, master." Immediately, he activated the reverse ether skill. The space around them immediately shifted, and countless lightning bolts appeared. Duke observed the surroundings in surprise, while Zeke, standing beside him, lowered his head, saying dejectedly, "I even have the ability to affect ether. A hallmark of true blood. Yet, for some reason, I can't use aura." He held his empty hand out in front of Duke, whose face was incredibly surprised. Seeing this, he thought to himself, "This truth will shield my deception." He lowered his head, pursed his lips, and appeared extremely worried and fearful. Then said, "I'm sorry for before. I was terrified because if it was revealed that a Draker couldn't use aura, I would be exiled." Saying that, he looked up at Duke with a terrified face. His eyes filled with tears. But in his heart, he was calculating a fitting rationale for this situation. Duke released a strand of power to probe Zeke's meridians. Immediately, his expression became serious. Zeke hesitated and asked, "So, what do you think, master?" Duke looked at Zeke intently, looking at his youthful appearance and worried face. He thought to himself, a kid with such determination at this age. But why can't I sense any aura, even after he awakened?" Then, he stroked his chin, deep in thought. Zeke stood by, unsure what to say. Seeing this, Zeke cautiously thought to himself, "Even if he checks my meridians, he won't be certain. The blessing ceremony is paramount for the Draker family. Even if I truly can't awaken aura, he will likely find a reason to explain the truth himself." Sure enough, as Zeke thought, after a moment of contemplation, Duke suddenly spoke. "It's a mutant." He placed his hand on Zeke's shoulder and said casually. Hearing this, Zeke closed his eyes, drawing emotion into his heart. He wondered, a mutant? Of course, That's the direction this is going. If he doesn't understand the concept of class, then that conclusion is logical. Thinking that, Zeke still pretended not to understand, asking curiously, "What's a mutant, master?" Duke patiently explained, "It refers to people with unusual abilities. For example, someone who uses both aura and ether, or someone who can see the future. Things that defy common sense." Saying this, he warned him, "Because of that, mutants are often treated badly. Don't go around saying you might be a mutant." With that, he immediately left. Zeke chased after him, asking curiously, "Then, why do you think I'm a mutant, master?" Even so, Duke didn't stop. He explained as he left, "Your abnormal physique and recovery, no matter how slight it is. Internal injuries take time to heal, but you recover instantly. I'm certain a huge amount of energy was consumed. What do you think that energy is?" Zeke tentatively offered an answer. "Aura?" Duke completely agreed. "Exactly. My hypothesis is that any aura you generate is immediately consumed by your physique and recovery, leaving no trace for you to sense." Hearing this, Zeke was extremely surprised. He exclaimed in his heart, "Oh, that's actually quite convincing." Running after Duke, he asked curiously, "Does that mean I'll never be able to use aura, master?" Hearing this, Duke looked up at the sky and laughed loudly, then reassured him, "Haha, don't worry." Then, he turned his head and looked at Zeke, smiling smugly, and said, "Whirlwind technique doesn't require aura, it's a special technique." A little later, the two were standing on the training floor. Duke explained patiently, "Special techniques are unique skills developed by high-level knights. Usually, they involve applying or enhancing Dragon Slayer techniques, which require aura, but my whirlwind technique relies entirely on physical training." Zeke sat on the ground, looking up at Duke, while Duke walked around him and continued, "I'll demonstrate. Observe carefully." As soon as he finished speaking, Duke jumped up, so powerfully that the ground beneath his feet shattered. Zeke watched in amazement as he moved at lightning speed. Duke moved so fast that it was impossible to see with the naked eye. In just a few seconds, footprints appeared everywhere he went. Only a few seconds later, Duke reappeared in his original position, so quickly that dust swirled around him. Turning to look at Zeke, Duke asked, "Did you see it?" Zeke nodded and replied, "I just need to follow in your footsteps, right?" Hearing that, Duke exclaimed, "Well, if that's all you think, then I don't need to explain further." Zeke immediately stood up, stretched his limbs, and said confidently, "I've seen enough." At this moment, there were countless footprints on the floor that Duke had left. Hearing Zeke's answer, Duke smiled with satisfaction and said, "Your confidence is on par with a Black Knight, well done. Show me what you can do." With that, Zeke immediately crouched down, ready to move. A gust of wind seemed to blow around him, carrying away the dust. He frowned, his eyes full of determination. Immediately, the footprints that Duke had left were overlaid with Zeke's footprints. His speed was no less than Duke's, continuously overlaying the footprints that Duke had created. Duke stood and observed everything, surprised to the point of being stunned. In Zeke's eyes, the footprints seemed to glow. He calculated in his mind, by following in his footsteps, the directions that were previously unseen have become clear. Each step is deliberate, whether it's for attacking, dodging, closing the distance, or creating distance. No step is wasted. The footprints on the floor emitted light like a matrix. Duke stood and watched Zeke complete his challenge with incredible speed. He exclaimed in surprise, "Unbelievable." Thinking of Zeke's strong appearance before, he was even more surprised. It's only been a week, he also has that talent. But this level, thinking of this, he was even more curious. What on earth happened in that 1 week? On the other side, Zeke had no idea what Duke was thinking. He was contemplating the footprints. The distance between the steps is somewhat different, isn't it? The more he thought about it, the more excited Duke became. He smiled brightly and said to himself, "A prodigy, truly perfect." At this moment, Zeke suddenly turned around, brushing the dust off his clothes and smiling arrogantly. "I deserve the confidence of a Black Knight, don't I?" Hearing that, the smile on Duke's face suddenly froze. His face turned red, and he thought angrily, if only he could get rid of that insufferable attitude. Duke grabbed Zeke, one hand tightly hugging his neck, the other rubbing his cheek, smiling angrily and saying, "You little brat, you were crying just a minute ago, and now you're showing off?" Zeke held Duke's arm, wondering, "You're not planning to brag about me, are you?" Duke smiled back and said, "That depends on your attitude, you insolent disciple." Hearing that, Zeke immediately showed disapproval. He complained, "What kind of former Black Knight isn't secretive at all?" Sometime later, at the Academy's dining hall, after a hard training session as usual, Zeke grabbed a plate piled high with all sorts of food. People passing by saw his huge plate of food, and they all turned to look in surprise. But Zeke didn't care. He was eating the bread in his hand while deep in thought. "It's been a month since I started training under Duke's tutelage, my portions keep increasing." While he was chewing voraciously with his mouth full, suddenly a figure appeared in front of him. Andre suddenly appeared and asked, "Can you spare some time?" Zeke Draker? Seeing the person who came, Zeke was very surprised. He wondered, "Andre?" Then, he said casually, "If it's here, then sure, because I'm very busy." Andre agreed immediately. "Good then." As he sat down in front of Zeke, Andre asked curiously, "How did you convince Dexter?" Zeke on the other side continued to put food in his mouth. Hearing that, he thought in surprise, straight to the point, "Huh?" Thinking about what had happened before, he thought, "It seems he panicked because I became a disciple, even though I haven't really become one." While chewing the meat in his mouth, Zeke casually replied, "Convince? It wasn't necessary. Dexter chose me himself." Hearing that, Andre was extremely angry. Suddenly, Andre saw the mark on Zeke's arm holding the knife. As if in thought, a moment later, Andre sneered, "It's all because you're true blood." Hearing that, Zeke, who was eating so happily, choked, and his face became unhappy. He angrily asked, "What was that?" He angrily slammed the knife and fork on the table. Then, he said contemptuously, "You're that insecure?" Hearing that, Andre was so shocked that his eyes widened. His hands, resting on the table, trembled. Andre asked again, "Is that all you wanted to say?" Zeke immediately denied, "No, only half of it." As he elegantly wiped his mouth, he continued casually, "Even if he was initially attracted by lineage, do you think someone like Dexter would accept a disciple for such a simple reason?" Zeke stopped wiping his mouth, pointed at himself, and said coldly, "The reason I was able to become his disciple, putting aside his interest, is because of my talent. So, instead of wasting time, channeling your jealousy to boost your confidence." As he spoke, he threw the napkin at Andre. He picked up the tray of food and stood up, looking at Andre sitting in front of him with a dark and powerful gaze. Then said coldly, "Why don't you try to become someone worthy of being chosen?" Andre was so intimidated that he didn't dare to look up. Sometime later, at the training ground in the West Greenhouse, Zeke and Duke stood outside, watching the person running in the field. Zeke turned and asked Duke, "What is this, master?" Duke crossed his arms, feigning ignorance, and replied, "I'm wondering the same thing." Seeing Andre running in the field, he wondered in surprise, "What's wrong with that kid?" He begged to be close and even offered to be a servant if necessary. "I told him to run 300 laps without aura if he wanted to stay. And now he's doing it." Hearing that, Zeke was very surprised. He thought, 300 laps without aura? Duke touched his neck, unsure what to do, sighed, and said, that guy is a certified lunatic." Zeke looked at Andre, smiling and saying to himself, "I thought he was just arrogant, but it seems he also has determination." On this side, Andre, although extremely tired, was still determined to complete the number of laps. The napkin Zeke had thrown away, who knows when it had been placed in the trash can. Amidst the vast and majestic grounds of the Draker family, an exquisite lake was built as a focal point when viewed from above, and a colossal clock tower loomed large. Hundreds of family trainees had gathered into neat formations, rows aligned like an army ready for battle. An atmosphere of excitement enveloped them, interspersed with whispers of anticipation and anxiety. "Idiot, have you forgotten what day it is? The family head will be visiting today." From afar, the sound of horses' hooves thundered through the air, kicking up clouds of dust. Carriages gradually appeared, with a noble royal symbol engraved on the roof, a dragon with outstretched wings and two swords crossed in an X shape. Someone shouted to announce, "The family head of the Draker family is arriving." Howard strode forth casually. He adjusted his mustache and said, "Everyone, prepare." The other trainees shouted in unison, "Yes, Principal." The luxurious carriage stopped in the courtyard, followed by a group of soldiers leading horses. Howard stood at a distance, waiting to greet the person inside the carriage. The guards approached to open the carriage door. A head of silver hair poked out. The person spoke first. "It's been a while, Howard." Howard respectfully bowed in salute. "I salute the master of the Draker family." The family head stepped out of the carriage, leisurely walking towards the magnificent castle, the wind blowing, causing the tail of their cloak to flutter. The soldiers actively moved aside, leaving a wide path and forming 2 rows of dignified guards, shouting, "We salute the master of the Draker family." Howard stood in the center, still in a bowed position. The clock tower neared 12 o'clock. As the second hand overlapped with the minute and hour hands, the clock sounded loudly, ding dong, signaling the moment had arrived. Around the family head's body, magic swirled like a violent storm, radiating an overwhelming power that seemed to shake space. It was perhaps the absolute pressure of someone standing at the pinnacle of power, a force that dominated everything beneath their feet. The family head slowly raised their hand, placing it on Howard's shoulder. Their face seemed to sink into endless darkness. "You've been through a lot, I can imagine," Howard modestly replied. "My efforts are nothing compared to yours, Master." The family head, also known as Arthur Draker, the master of the Draker family, one of the 3 great Dragon Slayer families, smiled reassuringly. "I will continue to rely on you." Then, Howard spoke. "The sun is a bit harsh today, let's go inside." Arthur Draker gestured to stop. At this moment, the other family trainees looked up at the noble figure standing on the steps, whispering excitedly, "Oh, it's the family head. Why are they here?" Arthur Draker raised one hand high, causing the leaves to fall gently. They looked up at the open sky, at the vast courtyard, and at the family trainees lined up neatly, spreading their arms wide and shouting, "Young Dragon Slayers, you are the future of the Draker family." Before the eager, hopeful eyes of the young trainees, Arthur Drak, he spoke in a firm, commanding voice, urging them to focus on training more and more for your development. Arthur Draker smiled enigmatically, referring to the development of Draker. The members of the family simultaneously knelt and responded, "We will remember this, Master." When everything was settled, the sun reached its zenith, its rays bright and harsh. In the rustling wind, Arthur Draker turned slightly and said, "All right, let's go." Howard, standing nearby, showed his respect. "Yes, Master." The following conversation took place in his private room, simply decorated yet elegant and refined. Zeke Draker appeared and bowed deeply, saying, "Master of all knights and the honorary protector of the dragon kin, Arthur Draker, I Zeke Draker, a member of this family, bow to you and offer my respect and greetings." Arthur Draker smiled faintly, pouring 2 cups of freshly brewed tea. "Even the people at the Four Seasons Fortress no longer greet like this." He gestured. "Forget the formalities. Sit down." Both of them sat. Arthur placed the tea on the table beside some delicious pastries, resembling a proper afternoon tea setup, and said, "I heard you like tea. I brought something excellent. Hope it suits your taste." Zeke Draker politely responded, "Thank you, Father." But as he watched his father sipping tea, Zeke's wariness grew. Even his tea preferences were reported back to the family. He held his cup and gazed at his reflection in the warm, aromatic tea. He thought, an emperor might not know, but the Draker family knows everything. "Now I understand." Arthur Draker spoke calmly, yet his words were direct and to the point. "The reason I called you is because I heard some surprising news. Duke has taken on an apprentice." Zeke Draker jumped, a little apprehensive, thinking, straight to the point, no ambiguity? He replied politely, "Master Duke is simply showing generosity towards me." Arthur Draker seemed pleased. "Is that so? If you say so, then it must be." Near the window, there was an empty birdcage, the door left open. Arthur spoke again, "I don't know what your goals are, but as long as you follow Duke's teachings." Zeke Draker interrupted, "I will become the strongest on the continent." The motion of drinking tea stopped. Arthur Draker furrowed his brows, his gaze sharp and dangerous. The open window let in a strong burst of sunlight, and a feather floated gently in the sunlight, reminiscent of Zeke Draker's current posture, determined as he emphasized, "Stronger than anyone, so I can live more freely than anyone else." Arthur Draker placed his empty cup down on the table. Zeke Draker eagerly concluded, "That is my goal." Suddenly, his father's face darkened. Before Zeke could react, an immense weight, like the force of gravity itself, pressed down on his body. He felt as if he were teetering on the edge of life and death. He struggled and let out a gasp, sweat pouring down like a stream. Inwardly, he was shocked, thinking, "Is this?" A tyrannical source of magic emanated from the tea table, spreading outwards. Within this space, the lives of all beings were under the master's control. Zeke Draker nearly collapsed, but he smiled in rare delight. Now he was certain. This was the celestial sword, the pinnacle of manipulating light, attainable only by the dark knights. Arthur Draker smirked, glancing at him. Even though Zeke Draker was struggling to remain upright, he responded to his father provocatively. Of course, Arthur Draker was pleased. Raising his cup, his magic began to wane, and Zeke Draker could finally regain some composure. Arthur Draker showed approval with a slight nod. Among everything I've heard recently, this has been the most interesting. Zeke Draker, having witnessed his father's power, nervously observed, "This is the current master of the Draker family." He was in awe, adding, "A true dark knight." Arthur Draker casually reached into his coat and spoke, "I came to visit the academy to encourage you. But seeing you now, encouragement alone is not enough." Zeke Draker was still lost in thought. "I thought Duke's level was absurd. But this is completely different." Suddenly, Arthur Draker placed a black card on the table, drawing Zeke's attention. Arthur Draker, in a generous tone, said, "As a gift for you becoming Duke's apprentice." Zeke hesitated, asking, "What is this?" His face turned pale as he exclaimed, "Father, you're giving me this?" Arthur Draker teased, "From your reaction, it seems like you know what it is." As Zeke stared at the noble black card bearing the family crest, he thought to himself, "This card is only given to a very select few VVIPs. It is known to offer enormous benefits with no spending limits." He never expected to see this legendary card in person. Arthur Draker smiled warmly and said, "I'll add you as a co-user. Feel free to use it." Zeke Draker nodded. "Thank you, Father. I will use it wisely." He gripped the black card, pondering its implications. The words were kind, but the intent was clear. Since the card would store information, it would make his actions easier to trace. However, since his father used a light-handed method rather than overpowering force, it meant he wasn't overly concerned about him. Arthur Draker's tone suddenly turned serious. "I cannot waste more of your precious time. Zeke, who will become the strongest?" He waved his hand. "You may leave now." Zeke Draker stood and bowed. "Understood, Master." He exited the room, closing the door politely behind him, and walked briskly down the hallway. Inside, 2 teacups lay motionless on the table. Arthur Draker leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes to rest. At that moment, Duke appeared behind him, criticizing, "What an obnoxious guy." Arthur Draker chuckled lightly. "Why are you so hot-headed, Duke?" Duke raised an eyebrow, dissatisfied. He was left behind at the cradle. "And now you're acting like a doting father?" Arthur Draker nonchalantly defended himself. "As the family head, I have no choice. You know that." Duke was unconcerned, sitting down. "Fine, go ahead, scold me." Arthur Draker reached into his coat again, smiling softly. "This is why you're the only one I can converse with freely." He pulled out a bottle of expensive wine, his eyes narrowing in temptation. "Let's drink and talk." Duke, seeing the wine, tossed all other matters aside, gleefully exclaiming, "Dragon's breath, and it's red too. See, you got an eye for things." Arthur Draker poured the wine and probed. "You've heard about the strange situation on the continent, haven't you?" Duke pretended to deny it. "I've been holed up in the academy." They clinked glasses, and Arthur Draker smiled. "How would I know?" Arthur Draker coldly exposed. "Your spies are still active on the continent, aren't they?" Duke, slightly tipsy, muttered, "You already know, don't you? So why ask, you old fox?" Arthur Draker shifted to the main topic. "The Emperor, obsessed with immortality, is searching across the continent like a madman." He nodded. "Do you think it's feasible?" Duke fiercely opposed. "Of course not. Eternal youth might be possible with magic, but immortality is absolutely impossible." Arthur Draker raised his glass, his amber eyes glowing. "I agree." Zeke Draker pieced everything together, the voice he heard in his head before he died. The message, the system he saw immediately after being reborn. He concluded, "Now it all makes sense. I stole the relic the Emperor craved, he even sent hounds after me." He pondered. "Back then, I didn't even care what it was. However, he had found a clue. He remembered the relic he picked up. The administrator system that brought him back in time. A function of the ancient dragon treasure. But who created it, and why?" Zeke Draker leaned back against the wall, tilting his head back and sighing. In the end, I just have more questions." At that moment, the Duke and Arthur Draker concluded their meeting. They exited the room, turning to head in opposite directions, but not forgetting to wave goodbye to each other. "All right, I'll act immediately. Arthur, I'm counting on you." His footsteps grew more distant. After walking a ways, His footsteps suddenly stopped. Conveniently, Arthur Draker stopped right in front of the door of a room. Sharp intuition told him something was inside. Zeke Draker, unaware, was still focused on analyzing the relic. If this really is the treasure the Emperor's looking for, could rebirth be related to eternal life? Suddenly, the door made a soft clicking sound. Zeke Draker's eyes widened in alarm. Arthur Draker flung open the door. But, unexpectedly, it was empty. Just a few stacks of boxes. It seemed the room had just been cleaned. Sunlight streamed through the window frame, creating gentle streaks of light. He remained silent for a long time. Then, he muttered, "Was I mistaken, then?" But in reality, his instincts were correct. It's just that Zeke Draker had quickly climbed out the window and hid under a bush outside. Later, it was time for practice. As he was panting and sweating from continuous sword practice, the door to the training room was suddenly knocked on. He grumbled, "Didn't I say not to disturb me in the training room, Decker?" Decker respectfully replied, "My apologies, Master Zeke. A fellow student has come to see you. Shall I tell them to leave?" Zeke Draker was taken aback. "Fellow student? I don't have any friends at the academy." He muttered, "Is it Raina? Alright." But moments later, Zeke Draker had to throw his hands up in exasperation, looking at the boy kneeling and bowing his head. He was helpless. Out of everyone, it had to be Liam Stone. He wondered, why am I even his friend? Yet, Liam Stone suddenly shouted, pleading, "Please, accept me." Zeke Draker wearily thought, "I should have just left back then." He sighed. "Accept you?" he asked. "What, as in, like a subordinate?" Liam Stone bowed his head and shouted, "Yes, Master, I swear my loyalty to you." Zeke Draker asked again, "What about Jackin, then?" Liam Stone seemed to be awakened with hatred. His bare fingers plunged straight into the ground, clenching tightly, leaving 5 deep grooves in the hard earth. He growled, "I've abandoned him." Despite his hands being bruised and bloody, Liam Stone persistently begged, "I need to get into Valhalla. Please, accept me." Zeke Draker, with judgmental eyes, glanced down at him. He secretly wondered, even in my past life, why is he so obsessed with Valhalla? Before Liam Stone's anxious expression, he coldly rebuked, "Are you stupid? You should have chosen Simmons or Tehran." Then, he turned and waved his hand, walking away. "I don't have a family backing me." Zeke Draker pulled out a practice sword. "That means I'm useless in helping you get into Valhalla, and—" Zeke Draker saw his reflection in the polished blade, his tone slow and ambiguous. "Why should I trust you? Frankly speaking," he casually emphasized the key point, "you could be a spy sent by Jackin. You know?" Liam Stone's heart seemed to sink into endless despair. Suddenly, he gripped the hilt of a dagger. Liam Stone drew the dagger from its sheath. He silently swung the dagger. Liam Stone held the dagger close to his carotid artery. Slice. Blood splattered. Liam Stone once again raised the bloodied knife high, and he said heavily, "You naturally doubt me. I will prove it by any means possible. If you ask me to be silent, I will cut my tongue." Liam Stone stabbed the dagger into the ground, and offered an ear that had just been cut off and swore, "If you ask me to cripple myself, I will cut my Achilles tendon. I will give my life to you, Master." Zeke Draker stared intently at him with blazing eyes. Bitter memories flooded back, remembering his weakness in the past, when he could only tremble, hug his bloodied ear, and sob when he was cut. The perpetrator gloated and sarcastically said, "Your worthless life isn't worth anything, but I'll accept your ear instead." Every drop of blood, every scream that day became his first lesson. Liam Stone struggled, drool dripping from his chin. "Please, accept me." The scene shifted to a dark forest night in the past life. Zeke Draker firmly declared to the mysterious figure opposite him, "I want to become stronger than anyone." He begged in a soulless way, his face scarred and bearded. "Please, teach me, Master." Zeke Draker's face darkened as he looked at Liam Stone kneeling behind. As Liam Stone continued babbling, "I beg you." A brand new sword flew over. He threw it quickly as lightning, with such force that the sword accurately stuck right behind Liam Stone. Zeke Draker warned, "One move." He pointed directly at his face, stating his condition, "If you can withstand one move from me, then I'll accept you." Liam Stone was scared out of his wits by the sword throw just now. He trembled and replied, "Thank you, Master." Later, they both entered the arena. Zeke Draker asked, "You've been treated, right?" Liam Stone nodded. "Yes, I have." The aura of magic in his body was fluctuating violently. He worried. I really thought withstanding one move wouldn't be too difficult. After all, he was a light energy draker. Then, Liam Stone hesitated. But, is this really someone the same age as me? Zeke Draker lazily dragged his sword forward. But the pressure he exuded was anything but ordinary. Liam Stone seemed to see magnificent dragon pupils widening and looking at him. The surrounding air swirled, making it difficult to breathe. Liam Stone's face paled as he panted. His vision gradually blurred, he thought. Even breathing is difficult. The fight began. Zeke Draker decisively rushed forward with his sword. Liam Stone, his head carefully bandaged, could only frantically raise his sword and shout as he charged. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out sharply. The two swords locked together for a moment. A terrifying impact erupted from the point of contact, spreading like a tidal wave, and the atmosphere trembled in waves. The two sharp swords rubbed against each other, sparking fire. Whoosh! A sword was knocked high into the air, spinning round and round. Finally, the sword fell, tightly fixing the gap between Liam Stone and Zeke Draker. Liam Stone fell backward uncontrollably, while Zeke Draker still held his sword firmly in his hand. He mocked the bewildered Liam Stone. So, that's all you've got? Zeke Draker sheathed his weapon, slinging the sword over his shoulder, and said disdainfully, "How pathetic." Seeing Liam Stone panicked at losing, Zeke Draker slung his sword over his shoulder and said ambiguously, "I respect your determination, but..." He turned his head and walked away, giving sincere advice. It would be better to give up on Valhalla. Liam Stone tried to get up, calling out, "Master Zeke." From the fierce battle and Liam Stone's expression, he could conclude, it seems he really was abandoned by Jaqen. If it weren't for being Jaqen's servant, someone from a distant branch family like him wouldn't even be able to get into the cradle. Even I, someone from the direct lineage, was exiled from that academy. It wouldn't be strange if Liam was exiled now. He just thought that he had enough reason to worry, when suddenly his body froze. It turned out Liam Stone had used all his strength to crawl and grab his leg. Refusing to let go, Zeke Draker was shocked. But is it worth clinging to this much? He recalled the past. In his previous life, Liam was expelled from the academy, and his knight order collapsed. But he still reached the Crimson Realm and became a mercenary king. But that event was still a long way off. Currently, Liam Stone was tearfully begging him, "Please, give me another chance, Master Zeke." Zeke Draker was annoyed. This guy, he doesn't intend to give up. Zeke Draker spoke up. "Alright, I'll give you a chance." Liam Stone was startled, tear stains still on his face. However, he coldly emphasized, "But there's one condition." Zeke Draker slowly turned his head, repeating Liam Stone's words before the fight. "Want to be silent? You have to cut your tongue. Want to be crippled? You have to cut your Achilles tendon. Right?" He put his hand on Liam Stone's shoulder. A murderous aura emanated from his whole body, and the darkness swallowed his face, making his expression deep and bottomless like an abyss. Each word was as heavy as hell. "Then, cut off your right hand." Liam Stone's face turned pale with horror, his eyes widening in disbelief. Zeke Draker sneered, "What? Is your right hand too precious?" Liam Stone desperately bit his lip, seeing his shoulders trembling in fear. Zeke Draker was relieved. That's enough of a scare, he thought. Basically, that's a request to give up the life of a swordsman. No one in their right mind would accept it. Zeke Draker bluntly dismissed Liam Stone. "I have a mountain of training to do. If you can't do it, then leave quickly." Unexpectedly, as he braced for continued training, Liam Stone struggled to stand up behind him. Zeke Draker glanced at him and thought, "I don't know why you're so desperate." He could only watch his dejected back, comforting him in his heart. "But don't be too discouraged, Liam. Even if you can't get to Valhalla, you can still reach the Crimson Realm." Suddenly, Liam Stone turned and raised his sword off the ground. Zeke Draker realized in horror that he hadn't given up. Even more crazy, Liam Stone actually swung his sword up to cut off his right hand. Zeke Draker rushed forward, cursing under his breath, "That fool." On the other side, Liam Stone decisively chopped down. Somewhere in the air lingered tears and sweat, reflecting the figures of the two of them. Zeke Draker held his sword and slashed forward, the force from his sword breaking Liam Stone's sword shaft. The broken part of the sword flew far away, hitting the ground repeatedly before lying still in a corner. Liam Stone stared blankly at his empty palm. Zeke Draker grabbed his collar. He gritted his teeth and scolded, "Hey, you crazy idiot, what if I changed my mind after you swung your sword?" Liam Stone said gloomily, That's because, he explained, I could lose something even more precious than my right hand. Zeke Draker helplessly shoved him, then turned his back and muttered softly, if you do something so stupid again, then I'll kick you out regardless of loyalty or not. Remember that clearly. Liam Stone was surprised. Then, realizing he had just been recognized by him, he excitedly shouted, Master Zeke, so that means… Zeke Draker didn't stop, but instead complied with the order. Hurry up, Liam. If outsiders know that my subordinate only has one ear, what will they think of me? Liam Stone's joyous shouts echoed throughout the building. Yes, sir. Understood, Master Zeke. Not long after, Zeke Draker brought Liam Stone into his private room to drink tea. Liam Stone touched the scar on the ear that had been reattached and healed. He asked a little uneasily, can I use such precious spiritual medicine? Zeke Draker enjoyed the gentle aroma of the tea while casually replying, I'm just investing in your value. Don't overthink it. Then, he put down the hot teacup. His expression changed. He interlaced his fingers and seriously questioned, so, what is it? After all? He vaguely speculated, your right hand. Ah, no. What is more important than your life? Liam Stone nervously gripped his wrist. He replied, my mother. Liam Stone recounted everything. A few days after being abandoned by Jackin, I received the news that my mother had a stroke due to a high fever. Fortunately, the fever has subsided, but her body is covered with red spots like roses. Zeke Draker frowned as he heard this. Liam Stone continued to tell, and she is getting weaker and weaker. He desperately recounted that the healers in the village didn't even know the name of the disease. Zeke Draker questioned, so, you're aiming for Valhalla? Liam Stone replied, that's right, Master. The medical benefits provided to the students of Valhalla and their families are the best on the continent. Zeke Draker wearily rubbed the bridge of his nose. He picked up the pen and dipped it into the inkpot next to him. Then, he muttered and wrote on the paper, red spots like roses. Zeke Draker recalled the symptoms of the disease in his previous life. Recurrent high fever, and red spots like roses all over the body. This is a symptom of rose disease. A disease that will spread throughout the central continent in 5 years. People with the disease had to lie in bed, and their skin would gradually be filled with roses. With high infection and mortality rates, it took countless lives. Those lives gradually decomposed into dry bones. The day the epidemic spread, the dry bones were piled up, until a dramatic treatment was created to end the epidemic. Zeke Draker folded the piece of paper. He gave the paper to Liam Stone and told him, this is the formula for the treatment of your mother's disease. It's not too difficult, so even the healers in the village can create it. Liam Stone took the paper with gratitude and hesitation. Thank you, Master. But how did you know about a disease that even the healers don't know the name of? In fact, in Zeke Draker's previous life, 2 masters appeared, 2 genius brothers, Al and Jeff. The 2 brothers created a therapy to save the desperate central continent. But money-grabbing alchemists exploited desperate people to make huge profits. When the 2 brothers learned about it, they publicly announced the formula to the public, spreading it so widely that even mercenaries like him knew about it. He thought so, but Zeke Draker pretended to say vaguely, just know that I know an alchemist is fine. He once again reached for the teacup and said, now that you have the treatment, you don't need to go to Valhalla or be my subordinate anymore. Liam Stone stood up abruptly and protested. That's impossible, he solemnly declared. I've given my life to you, Master Zeke. Liam Stone put his hands on the ground. Then he knelt down like a servant saluting. I swear to be loyal to you until death. Zeke Draker brought the teacup close to his lips and smiled faintly, muttering triumphantly in his heart, a pledge of allegiance. It is also reassuring to have a mercenary king as a subordinate. He warned, if you fall behind, I will leave you behind. So keep up. Liam Stone immediately replied, yes, Master. In the afternoon, the warm sunset covered the academy. The sun gradually set behind the hill. In Principal Howard's office, a secret conversation took place. He slowly asked, so what's the matter? He addressed the person opposite him, Student Owen. Owen placed his hand on his chest and respectfully bowed. Yes, Principal. He calmly stated his opinion. I have a suggestion. What do you think about increasing the difficulty of this semester's evaluation? Howard stroked his mustache and asked with interest. Why? Owen began to present. You may think this is a subjective judgment, but this year's freshmen are very outstanding. Among them are 2 genuine blood awakeners, and many are from powerful noble families. He leisurely judged. If the test is given with the same difficulty as last year, it will definitely fail to clearly distinguish their abilities. Howard pondered. He gently praised. You have given a reasonable opinion, worthy of the position of seaman's heir. I will consider it in a positive direction. Owen touched his forehead and performed a thank you gesture. Thank you, Principal. Then he left. The door of the principal's office was carefully closed. The principal turned his chair back and sighed ha. In front of him were the last rays of sunset shining through the window. And he was immersed in lingering memories. Blood is really unmistakable. He sighed secretly. Unexpectedly, their ideas are so similar. He remembered Zeke Draker, who is currently helping Liam Stone practice swords. Considering the points of the future then, he thought about Zeke Draker's face. It's better to nip it in the bud. One bright morning, the clear blue sky was dotted with leisurely white clouds, and the trees swayed gently in the light breeze, exuding a peaceful and serene atmosphere. It was a very important day, the day of the semester assessment test. All the students gathered in a large castle-like building, surrounded by countless mysterious passages known as the dungeon caves. They have assigned tasks. Explore the dungeon caves. The Dungeon Cave Exploration Test is a unique semester evaluation method at the Draker Academy. In this test, students must escape from the dungeon cave within a limited time in groups of 2. The difficulty of the dungeon cave assigned to each pair is different. And that is the main feature of the test. Zeke Draker and Liam Stone appeared, both fully equipped with bags and swords. He put his hands in his pockets and teased Liam Stone with interest. Nervous, Liam? He hesitated to reply. Yes, I'm a little worried. Zeke Draker smiled slightly. It's only natural. If you're too worried, you'll make mistakes. If you're not worried enough, you'll be arrogant. That moderate level will help avoid both. Raina Tarun's group was quite lively. The members of the group laughed and joked, and she took a deep breath nervously. At this time, the students were called one by one to start the test. Next, Zeke Draker, Liam Stone. Zeke Draker calmly entered the dungeon cave. Let's go. Liam Stone respectfully replied. Yes, master. But a hand reached out to stop them. Wait a moment. Both looked at the dungeon cave examiner in question. The dungeon cave examiner pointed in another direction. You go over there. Looking in that direction, it was a deep dungeon cave just like the others. Zeke Draker glanced and assessed the dungeon cave examiner. The dungeon cave examiner did not move and even gave a reverse order. What are you still standing there for? Go, students. He calmly retracted his gaze. Then he entered the dungeon cave as the other party wished. Yes, I will follow the order. Liam followed closely behind him. Behind each dungeon cave is a long staircase. The two stepped down each step. Zeke Draker held the lamp and went ahead to light the way. And he analyzed the current situation. The difficulty varies according to the dungeon cave. But because it is a dungeon cave test controlled by Draker, there is no significant danger. The goal is to escape within the limited time. They were all given a gold watch, and the counter for each pair started when they entered, if calculated based on the mission time, and all have exactly 96 hours. Basic combat is also part of the assessment. Bringing back the heads of the defeated monsters will help add extra points. After defeating the monsters, Zeke Draker continued to go ahead and light the lamp. He knew very well that extra points were also an important part. But the most important thing was to escape from the dungeon cave. Failure to escape within the limited time means failing the subject. So in this dark dungeon cave, they found an abandoned room, and the two immediately set up camp temporarily. Warm light shone from the room, and Zeke Draker advised, "We've eaten, so let's rest for a while." Liam was very worried about Zeke Draker. You took care of everything from setting up camp to preparing the meal. You should rest first. He refused. I can work for 4 days without sleep. Don't worry. The flickering flame illuminated the entire table. They had just eaten their fill. Liam Stone said helplessly, "Then I will take the liberty of resting first. If you don't mind." Zeke Draker nodded. "All right, I'll wake you up if anything happens." After that, he stayed awake alone to watch the fire. And his shadow seemed to merge into the endless night. Zeke Draker reviewed the time on the counter. He thought, it's been 16 hours since exploring the dungeon cave. I've stayed up for 3 nights to prepare for the test. So I've been awake for about 90 hours. He calculated that endless physical strength only helps recover physical fatigue, but it does not help reduce mental exhaustion. In a dungeon cave where anything can happen, minimizing risks as much as possible is best. When Zeke Draker was absent-minded, Suddenly there was a bell ringing somewhere. Sometimes near and sometimes far. As if creeping in space. His mind was dizzy. His face was pale. He was a little vague. Once Liam wakes up, I need to switch shifts with him. Before Zeke Draker's eyes, it was like being in a white snow screen. The image of the silver bell appeared. He closed his eyes and fell asleep. The scene gradually revealed. A corner of the door covered with hanging silver bells dinging. The red flag with the lion symbol fluttered. The tall holy sea, white hair as white as cold snow, was stained with blood. The beautiful girl was now tattered and dilapidated, lying in the freezing winter. And behind her was a large patch of blood stained. The bell was still ringing far away. Zeke Draker woke up in a panic. He saw that he was still sitting alone beside the fire. And it was eerily quiet around. He tiredly hugged his face. Oh my God, it's that dream again. Then he paused and opened his eyes to look through his fingers. Wait, what did I hear? The bell rang softly. He suddenly realized that the sound came from somewhere outside the abandoned room. Zeke Draker immediately used water to put out the fire. He carried his bag and sword and called Liam Stone. Wake up, Liam. There are enemies. I'll go check the situation first. Don't light a fire. Liam Stone opened the tent and replied. Understood, Master. Zeke Draker carefully hid behind the guard wall. It would be too risky to use dragon eyes in a 4-day exam. Instead, I just need to let my eyes adjust to the darkness. Suddenly, he smelled a pungent and acrid smell. Zeke Draker was shocked. This smell, sulfur. Could it be? He couldn't believe. Could the other side be the terrible creature he was thinking of? The creature with the smell of sulfur that hunts in packs. Dangerous monster level 3, Hellhound. Zeke Draker tightened his sword and worried secretly. In his previous life, Raina brought orcs back in the assessment. But unexpectedly there were also hellhounds. Suddenly he realized the tremors outside had become different. Zeke Draker felt uneasy. Wait, something is wrong. Even the leader of the hellhounds cannot weigh more than a few hundred kilograms. He can't reveal himself. He slowly poked half of his sword outside, intending to use the sword body as shiny as a mirror to see what was going on. Zeke Draker looked through the sword and saw that the entrance to the room was empty. He secretly assessed, but the tremors of this size then. It feels like it weighs at least tens of tons. Is it a mutant? Suddenly a sharp light shone into his eyes painfully. Zeke Draker only had time to curse. Damn it. Rumble. A powerful force slammed over, breaking the wall and blasting him out. Zeke Draker was forced to appear. Liam Stone, who had just arrived, witnessed this scene. Zeke Draker's sword rubbed hard against the ground, igniting a flame. He used force to stick the sword firmly to hold on so as not to fall back. His sword cut a deep groove in the ground. Liam Stone worriedly cared for him. Are you alright, Master? Zeke Draker gritted his teeth. Those Seaman's bastards, even the ferocious hellhounds before. I knew they were playing tricks behind my back. Because now the hellhounds only had the head hanging limp on his hand. Looking up a little, it was a giant creature in the shape of an orc, even twice as muscular, with elf ears and a long beard, looking exactly like a snow elf. It threw the head of the hellhound to the side, raising a mace full of sharp thorns. Zeke Draker was annoyed. They were deliberately trying to kill me. Liam Stone was stunned and flustered. A troll. Speaking of trolls, you must know. Trolls. Monsters with a danger level of 1. Can easily swallow hellhounds or orcs. Troll blood is the main ingredient for creating recovery spiritual medicine. And their recovery ability is ridiculous. Liam Stone rushed forward and stood in front of Zeke Draker. He declared, I'll be the decoy. Please escape, Master. Hearing this, he gave him a satisfied look. Zeke Draker stood up and patted Liam Stone on the chest. Don't say such depressing words. What kind of master would abandon his subordinates? Both backs rested against each other. And he said, don't worry about me. I believe in your efforts. Liam, you're not weak. Zeke Draker smiled confidently. I will support you. Just do as you wish. As if strengthened, he smiled as well. Thank you, Master. The two simultaneously rushed to the position of the troll. The two worked together to display beautiful sword moves on it. Zeke Draker's eyes probed. Not bad. Looking at the muscular arm full of wounds, he secretly commented that it was impressive for him to manage to inflict injuries on the troll's thick skin. He aimed accurately at the joints. Looking at the weakened troll collapsing, he was surprised. Did you also take the time to study the monster? Then he thought. But, in the next second, the troll's mace was hitting Liam Stone hard. Zeke Draker slashed the sword. He kicked the stalactites from the ceiling of the dungeon cave and jumped down to block in front of Liam Stone. Whoosh! The troll's mace full of sharp thorns was cut in half before his eyes. Liam Stone said a little guiltily, "I'm sorry, Master." Zeke Draker comforted, "It's okay. It's not bad to do that much in the first battle." The troll was furious because it broke its weapon, and he was busy explaining to him, "Aiming at the relatively soft joints is a good option. But you underestimated the troll's recovery ability. Remember, the small scratches of the troll will heal immediately. Direct attacks cannot keep up with their recovery ability." Without a mace, the troll raised its huge hand high, intending to smash the two of them. Zeke Draker sighed, "It seems this level is still too much for you." He held his sword in preparation for the final killing battle, and he declared, "I will finish it." Finally, the troll was killed by the two teachers and students. The system announced, "You have killed a troll. You have received 30 karma points." Zeke Draker patted the troll's head and said, "This should give me quite a few extra points." "Pick it up." Liam Stone, who had just picked up his bag, replied, "Yes, Master." He knelt down next to the troll's corpse, while Zeke Draker was checking the window. The window displayed a new task. Sudden task. 1. Hunt 100 monsters from 10 species in the dungeon cave. Time limit, 72 hours. Task reward, double karma points from the task process, plus 2 random chests. He was secretly delighted. What? Double karma points? The window continued to display the content. Task status. 2 species of non-aggressive monsters have been excluded. Time remaining, 71 hours 59 minutes 52 seconds. Zeke Draker immediately checked the counter. He calculated, the exam ends in 79 hours. 100 monsters aren't a problem. Then he worried, but meeting the condition of 10 species is troublesome. Even with a large dungeon cave like this, in normal circumstances, there are only 4 to 5 species at most. He crossed his arms and thought, but those Siemens bastards have set this up. If I carefully search, I might be able to get enough for 10 species. Complete the mission, and then escape, it'll be very tight. At this moment, Liam Stone suddenly interrupted, "I'm done, Master." Zeke Draker looked at him in front, wearing a small bag, and behind, carrying a large bag. The bag provided with the watch was used to collect heads. Its usability was far inferior to a space bag, but it was effective enough to transport loot. He nodded and said, "Good, let's move out immediately. Don't fall behind." Liam Stone shouted, "Understood." Time in the mission kept passing. 67 hours 04 minutes 16 seconds. Then 64 hours 07 minutes 60 seconds. 61 hours 00 minutes 03 seconds. Then 56 hours 00 minutes 47 seconds. During that time, they fought with packs of wolves. When there were 47 hours 01 minutes 06 seconds to 41 hours 01 minutes 41 seconds left, they dealt with a lot of minor goblins. With 39 hours 08 minutes 04 seconds left, they faced giant bat monsters. 31 hours 33 minutes 44 seconds. 27 hours 00 minutes 47 seconds. 20 hours 08 minutes 49 seconds. And 12 hours 26 minutes 26 seconds. They traveled a long day. The two found a place to set up camp. Zeke Draker closed his eyes and fell asleep in the tent. Liam Stone was outside watching the fire on night watch. The next morning, Zeke Draker asked him, "How are you doing, Liam? We've hunted quite a few monsters. Do you feel familiar with actual combat yet?" Liam Stone turned his head and smiled slightly. "I'm not sure yet." Zeke Draker still said gently, "It's okay. It takes time to adapt." Then his gaze deepened. He opened the winding map in the window. The system announced, "Time remaining, 00 hours 50 minutes 54 seconds. Task status, 9 species out of 99 monsters." Zeke Draker had a headache. "I even hunted thumb-sized vampire spiders. And it's still only 9 species." He tiredly hugged his head. There's nowhere left to look. Those Siemens bastards could have prepared one more species. Suddenly his pupils trembled in alarm. Zeke Draker felt the ground shaking violently. A crack revealed blinding light. Heading towards Liam Stone, Zeke Draker grabbed his sword and ran over. "Liam, drop the bag." Liam Stone still didn't understand what was happening. Swoosh! A streak of light struck down. At this moment, a large creature emerged next to Liam Stone, piercing through the ground. Zeke Draker had just ran to Liam Stone when he saw the scene of blood splattering on the arm. Blood puddles scattered everywhere. When he came to his senses, Liam Stone's face was pale with horror. Zeke Draker was holding his sword in one hand, standing in front of him, the other hand drooping down covered in fresh blood. His sleeve was gone. He asked him in a panic, "Are you alright, master?" He waved his hand. "Don't worry. It's just monster blood." Then he moved his bloodied arm. He instructed Liam Stone, "This time, just watch." Liam. It turned out that the thing that had just emerged was a giant mutant worm. No eyes, no nose, only a round mouth like a bottomless cave. It opened its mouth, and there were 4 large fangs hanging on both sides of its mouth. Inside the mouth, tens of thousands of tiny fangs swirled into a vortex in the throat. It roared at Zeke Draker and Liam Stone. He calmly looked at this grotesque monster. Zeke Draker said to Liam Stone, "I don't think I'll be able to keep an eye on you this time." But in his heart, he analyzed with hesitation. Dungeon Worm, a high-risk monster specializing in elimination. Ranked dark purple. The dungeon worm opened its mouth full of foul breath. Zeke Draker was secretly excited. Those bastards. They really went all out. The dungeon worm rushed towards him. Its huge body sent dust flying everywhere. Liam Stone shouted in panic, "Master!" He gritted his teeth. His face darkened. Then Liam Stone turned his head. He rummaged through his bag. On this side, Zeke Draker was struggling against the fangs of the dungeon worm. He took the opportunity to slash its back after luring it to slam its head into a pile of rocks. Zeke Draker glanced at the entrance of the cave. Even a blue-ranked knight would hesitate when encountering a dungeon worm in a place like this. Looking at the stalactites hanging drooping on the ceiling of the cave, he thought about its ability to sneak around underground. He concluded, this makes the battle prolonged. Suddenly, the ground under his feet cracked. Zeke Draker was vigilant. The dungeon worm emerged again, opening its mouth to swallow him whole. Now he understood why it had to drag it out. This helps it erode the strength of its prey, leading to the risk of being buried alive. Zeke Draker crouched down under its belly to avoid its attack. Then he tightened his sword and displayed a fighting stance. He stabbed it repeatedly. Each time, he gritted his teeth, and his eyes were bright. Zeke Draker slashed a long line along the body of the dungeon worm. It coughed up blood. The purple color looked very strange. He was angry and determined. "In that case, I'll split you in half." Zeke Draker crushed the rocks under his feet. He continued to lengthen the abdominal cut on the dirty worm, but it suddenly curled up, leaving him unable to react. The dungeon worm wrapped around him, squeezing tightly. He groaned in pain. Ugh, as if the bones in him were completely broken. Zeke Draker vomited blood. The dungeon worm saw that he was injured, so it bent its pointed tail and opened its mouth to chew him. At this moment, a sword stabbed hard into its body. It turned out to be Liam Stone. The dungeon worm struggled and screamed in pain, seeing that it loosened its coils, and the pressure had decreased. Zeke Draker immediately used his self-healing ability. Then he jumped right out of there, landing on its body in another place. At this moment, Liam Stone saw that he had safely escaped, and said anxiously from below, "Master, are you okay?" He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and asked him, "What did you do, Liam?" Liam Stone said honestly, "I put anesthetic on the sword." Zeke Draker widened his eyes in surprise. He thought, so that's it. The main ingredient of that anesthetic is belladonna. For most creatures, it only causes mild numbness. Then he looked at the dungeon worm trembling and constantly spitting blood. But for worms, it is a deadly poison. Zeke Draker praised Liam Stone in his heart. Unexpectedly, in this critical situation, you remembered that belladonna is poisonous to worms and used anesthetic as a substitute. That ability to think quickly and adapt, worthy of the name, Liam. He was triumphant. Accepting you was the right decision. He told Liam Stone, "Liam, when I signal, use your sword to stab it again. Okay?" After that, Zeke Draker stepped and rushed quickly on the body of the dungeon worm. He quickly moved from its tail to its head. Then he swung his sword and jumped into the air, shouting, "Liam!" Liam Stone stabbed anesthetic into the body of the dungeon worm. It screamed out in agony. Suddenly it realized something was wrong. Zeke Draker was using his ultimate skill. He decisively cut the dungeon worm in half. Sever. In the next second, the dungeon worm split in two, and blood spurted high and violently like a water column. The system announced, "You have completed the sudden task. Karma points received through the task are doubled. You have been rewarded 2 random chests. Current karma points, 780. In front of the dungeon cave entrance, students gathered and talked excitedly. There were people lined up in long queues in front of the table to submit their products. The instructors shouted, "Those students who have escaped, come here to be graded. Those who are done can leave." Raina Turun submitted the exam. The instructor nodded. "All right, I will begin the evaluation." Raina Turun and her teammates replied. "Understood," the instructor said. "Basic points for escaping, 30 points, 20 goblins, 2 hobgoblins, 1 orc." The instructor concluded. Total points, 180. The other students whispered to each other. "That's close to Abel's record of 200 points. Sure enough, a true bloodline is on a different level." The instructor looked satisfied. "Of course, it's Turun, exceeding the passing score by 130 points." Raina Turun bowed her head modestly and replied, "Thank you for the praise." It was Owen's group's turn. The instructor also said, "All right, I will begin the evaluation." After grading, he summarized, "Total points, 120. You have exceeded the passing score by 70 points. Well done." Owen's teammates laughed happily. "Thank you." Only he had a dark face and was annoyed. He looked at Raina Turun and secretly resented. "Raina Turun, you won't be arrogant forever." A look of domineering scheming flashed in Owen's eyes. Well, if things go wrong, remembering when he suggested the idea to Principal Howard, and even the dungeon cave examiner who tricked Zeke Draker into a dangerous dungeon. It was all Owen's plan. He thought, just deal with it like Zeke. Speak of the devil. A familiar voice rang out behind him, making Owen startled. How long has it been? He turned his head. This voice, Zeke Draker and Liam Stone appeared. They had safely returned from the dungeon, and they were carrying the corpse of a giant creature on their backs. Owen was shocked. Why is he here? The surrounding students marveled at the giant creature they were carrying. Is that a dungeon worm? Wasn't the orc the monster with the highest points? Why is that thing here? They took down a dungeon worm together? The dungeon worm's head was thrown down, and dust flew everywhere. Zeke Draker, with his uniform missing a sleeve, put his hand in his pocket and turned to smile at Owen. "You look surprised." "Owen," Zeke Draker mocked. "Are you so happy to see me?" Owen bit his lip in anger. "You arrogant devil," he gloated and sarcastically said. "Where's the emotionless face you always have?" Zeke Draker deliberately revealed the family crest on his glove. "Well, you look much better like this." Owen's expression darkened horribly. He turned his head and walked away without saying a word. Zeke Draker pretended to be regretful. "Are you leaving so soon?" Owen's face was full of bulging veins, and his eyebrows were frowning wildly. He made a decision. "You true blood bastards. I'll make you pay for looking down on me." Looking at Owen running after the group with a grimace, Zeke Draker teased, "So fierce." After finishing, he turned to the instructor who had been waiting for him to score for a long time, and asked, "Is your power struggle over?" "Student?" Zeke Draker replied happily. "Ah, yes, it's been a long time." Then he called the instructor's name. "Instructor Andre." Instructor Andre said, "All right, I will begin the evaluation." Zeke Draker looked at his own and Liam Stone's pile of products and wondered. "There's nothing else. Do we need to calculate points separately?" Instructor Andre immediately put on forensic gloves. "As long as I'm the evaluator, I won't miss anything," he said. "Didn't you lose the bag of heads?" Zeke Draker said, "That's right." What followed was a series of disgusting scenes. Despite the blood splashing and sticking to his armor, Instructor Andre dissected the dungeon worm corpse brought back by Zeke Draker. Many students who saw this felt a chill down their spines, and some couldn't stand it and ran off to vomit. Zeke Draker was unharmed on one side, and he smiled secretly. Luckily, if you ask why Instructor Andre was chosen to check. In fact, when fighting the dungeon worm, that damn dungeon worm attacked, and I lost all the heads I had collected for more than 3 days. I couldn't fail, so I had to take the worm in a hurry. Looking at Instructor Andre's emotionless blood-stained face, Zeke Draker was very happy. Apart from Andre, who else would thoroughly examine the skin scraps stuck in those rows of teeth? Finally, Instructor Andre took off and threw away the forensic gloves stained with dungeon worm blood. He declared, "The monsters identified so far are gremlin, goblin and hobgoblin, hellhound and orc, and finally, troll." The students there who heard this turned pale and couldn't believe it. "Troll? There are trolls too?" Instructor Andre wiped the blood from his arms and said, "Based on the amount of blood, it seems there are about 10. But if we acknowledge it, it will not be fair. So we will treat it as one of each type of monster identified that was defeated." He also explained, "In addition, Trolls and dungeon worms are not in the scoring criteria, but based on the records, they are equivalent to 3 to 6 orcs respectively. We will count them as 90 and 180 points. The final result, total points 368. Pass. At this time, some instructors had begun to doubt their lives. When we were students, what were our points? At that time, hellhounds were not even on the list. The students questioned in shock. 368 points. How is that possible? One student who was unwilling complained. This is cheating. There's only the dungeon worm corpse here. Immediately someone refuted. Hey, the dungeon worm corpse alone is 180 points. Then the same person sighed. But what does that matter now? The person who refuted awakened the thoughts of the other students. Think carefully everyone. If everyone encounters dungeon worms, or a troll, looking back at themselves, if it wasn't for Zeke Draker's group, could everyone have survived? They exclaimed. Zeke Draker. Is he really that good? At this time, Zeke Draker was chatting with Liam Stone. But he didn't forget to secretly probe the situation here. They're overdoing it. It feels so different from when they mocked me. He squinted. Not bad, but Zeke Draker analyzed everything from beginning to end. I'm attracting attention again. Siemens went so far as to manipulate the dungeon cave examiner. Then, the accidental appearance of the dungeon worm. Just to eliminate me. He doubted. Is that Owen acting alone? He denied himself. No, even he wouldn't dare interfere with the academy's exam. Zeke Draker guessed. Maybe the Siemens family took action. He raised his vigilance. I'm being watched more closely than I thought. Hiding my strength too much will backfire. For now, I should go along with it and observe. At this time, a figure approached him. The person called Zeke Draker. He turned his head. It was Raina Tarun's group. He was surprised. Raina? She stepped past him and growled. You won this time. He blankly watched her group gradually leave. Zeke Draker gave a helpless smile. I won. What do you mean? When he returned to the training room, he asked the system, is this what you wanted? Right? The system window displayed. Dragon Technique Level 1 Devour. Can eat and digest many things. Requires 50 points to unlock. Karma points available, 780. He muttered. I've ignored it because it seemed useless. But spending 50 points now is nothing. The system asked, activate Devour skill? He immediately agreed. Yes. The window screen change. Zeke Draker was surprised. The skill description has changed. The skill content. Dragon Technique Level 1 Devour. Devour mode. Anything can be digested and converted into energy. In addition, consuming monsters containing bloodline energy allows the absorption of its power. He was secretly satisfied. Absorb the power of monsters. I should have activated this before the exam. He picked up a piece of fresh red meat. I will have to try to convert energy to understand it. The system announced. Activate Dragon Technique Devour. Suddenly, a black smoke shot out from the meat. Zeke Draker didn't understand anything. Then he glanced back. From when? His shadow had turned into endless black shadows like distant tree branches. He startled. What is this? The fresh red meat was gradually swallowed by the black shadow. He stared blankly, as if sinking into a swamp. The meat disappeared in the shadow part. At this time, a burst of energy suddenly entered his body. The system announced, replenish lost energy with absorbed energy. Zeke Draker hugged his head. Feeling lightheaded, my headache has lessened, as if I slept. It relieved mental fatigue? This source of power seemed to heal from within. Not only that, and I felt full of vitality. Mental fatigue, physical fatigue and even my ether chamber. He could feel, if only a little, but clearly he had recovered. The system continued to announce. Activate Dragon Technique Devour. Zeke Draker threw a lot of meat into it. He said decisively, it is really worth 50 points. With this skill alone, I have been able to minimize the risk in all skills already. Then he smugly, mental fatigue can be relieved by Devour. And I don't even feel physical fatigue thanks to endless stamina. Zeke Draker couldn't help but look up to the sky and laugh. I can train 24 hours without eating, drinking or sleeping. I should start from right now. Suddenly the sound of knocking on the door interrupted his emotional impulse. Zeke Draker quickly withdrew the black shadow. He grumbled, Decker, didn't I tell you last time? Don't bother me when I'm training. Decker respectfully replied, it is an important message, so I had to deliver it quickly. He asked again, an important message, Decker said, your sword is complete. Zeke Draker's eyes flashed. Finally, the next day, blue sky and white clouds. Zeke Draker came to Galleon's house and asked, Galleon, is my sword complete? Galleon said, yes, please wait a bit. But when he saw the sword and the box, he put his chin on his hands and meditated. In his previous life, the sword he received from Galleon was forged from mithril and pure iron. He remembered that legendary sword. Graham. Anyone could tell it was an extraordinary sword. Even though he provided dragon fangs as a material this time, he also thought it looked like Graham. But that's when Graham was a sword shining brightly. As it is now, the scale sword he is seeing is not only pitch black, but also emits a dark breath. What is this?